evening and welcome to December. The Brattleboro Select Board is next here on BCTV. Among the items to be discussed tonight, a proposed first-class liquor license for the owners of the Turquoise Grill in the Brooks House. Under new business, errors and omissions to the grand list, the West Brattleboro Fire Station presentation and discussion, and as well more discussion on the FY16 budget proposal for the town. The Energy Committee's annual report to the Select Board, a proposed town meeting article on Brattleboro climate protection, a work plan budget and town meeting article for Brattleboro's Downtown Alliance, a second chance grant for the Brattleboro Community Justice Center, and a consideration of a future agenda item dealing with fundraising for the town. All that and more coming up. The Brattleboro Select Board is here on BCTV. Thanks for watching.
Good evening. It's December 2nd, 2014, and we're here for our first December Brattleboro Select Board meeting. Welcome everybody who's in attendance. We've got a full room here. Welcome everybody who's watching on TV. We know that the meeting has been officially warned because we convened at 5:30 and went into executive session to discuss contract and labor relations matters. We've risen from executive session without taking any action on those matters that were discussed in executive session. The first item on the agenda tonight is to approve the minutes from November 18th. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from November 18th as presented?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there any discussion, any changes, any comments on the minutes from November 18th from anybody on the board or anybody who's in attendance? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes from the November 18, 2014 Select Board meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. The next matter on the agenda is chair's remarks. It's nice to see so many people here tonight. With the holiday season upon us, we want to encourage everybody to support local organizations. Project Feed the Thousands and the Christmas stocking are certainly two worthy causes, and I don't really have any other comments this evening. The next matter on the agenda is town manager's comments.
No comments at the moment.
Next matter on the agenda is select board comments and committee reports. Anybody on the select board?
I got nothing. Quiet times.
We had a traffic safety meeting, I guess, last week, and a series of traffic safety related issues were raised. We had a serious report about work that's been done to study data, and we're looking to try to make sure the procedures and the processes that are in place are best formatted to make sure we're using that data when we consider making improvements for traffic-related issues. So that's something we're going to be working on going forward. Anybody else on the board? Well, next item on the agenda is public participation. This would be a good time for anybody who's got comments about something that's not on the agenda to speak to them. Mr. Wilmerding? Yep.
Thank you. John Wilmerding, 2nd District. After representative town meeting in March, I volunteered to serve on the town of Brattleboro's Finance Committee, and the moderator, Lauren Crisp, told me I should consider myself reappointed. I'd served previously for 3 years. The town charter calls for the Finance Committee to make a report to representative town meeting every year on the finances of the town, including recommendations. And I would like to ask people, if you are interested in helping to prepare such a report, it would involve reviewing budgets and analyzing and commentary to those budgets. Please be in touch with Lauren Crisp, the town moderator, or myself. I would like to try to work on some kind of a report for the town within the next month or so to begin that work. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tim Johnson, WTSA, a member of the Project Feed the Thousands Planning Committee. New numbers just in indicate that we are still lagging behind in contributions. Again, this year's goal, $100,000 in cash and non-perishable food items equaling 200,000 meals. So just a public appeal to the people here in the audience and to viewers to do whatever you can to make sure that people in need don't go hungry, not only this holiday season, but during 2015. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. Anybody else who's in attendance want to speak to something that's not on the agenda? Well then, the next item on the agenda is to convene as liquor commissioners. So we're ready for a motion to convene as liquor commissioners.
So moved.
We have motion to convene as liquor commissioners. Is there any discussion from anybody on the board or anybody who's in attendance? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. So the only matter under liquor commissioners is an application for a first-class liquor license for Turquoise Grill. It's Hale? Holly. Holly, if you want to come up to the table, it's a chance for some free publicity.
It's not nerve-wracking.
You don't have to go alone.
Two of you can come if you like. Excellent. Hey, you can come, you can sit at the table.
Make yourself comfortable.
Bet you didn't think you were going to sit at the big table, did you?
No, I did not.
All right.
I was
All right.
comfortable over there.
So if you want to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about the business that you're going to be opening up, it's just some free airtime that you're getting, some free advertisement.
Sure. My name is Declan O'Donnell, and this is my wife, Holly Kazilton. And we're going to be opening the Turquoise Grill at 128 Main Street in the Brooks House. We're going to begin construction on that real soon. And we're basically just looking to be able to serve beer and wine at the beginning, and then maybe in the future move into a full liquor license.
Which building is it going to be? Which is it right next to the yoga or the?
No, it's I don't know how to describe. It's in the. If you go in the main entrance to the Brooks House, it's the first unit on the left.
Oh, okay.
And what kind of food are you going to be serving?
We're going to do burgers, we're going to do kebabs. It's going to be a grill type, so mostly meat. People are going to want beer. Yes.
Burgers, kebab, and beer.
So it's lunch and
Lunch and dinner.
dinner.
We're looking to operate probably between 11 and 9. So that's going to be the operation hours, pretty
Does
much.
that store have Main Street frontage?
It does.
It does?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Great.
How many people can it seat?
We're not quite sure yet, but we're
It's gonna.
maybe between 20 and 30.
We're trying to give you guys as much of your 15 minutes of fame here as possible here, so.
It probably won't be any more than 45. I mean, depending on after we start building, we will know exactly. But it is not a very big space, so we're not looking at a huge, large seating.
There's another family business that's in the reopened Brooks House as well?
Excuse me?
There's another business, family business,
Yes.
that's reopened in the Brooks House. How's it going?
It's going really well. We're
Nice
really
place.
happy to be back there. So,
Good.
Brilliant. That's
brilliance, yes.
Brilliance.
Yeah.
There we go.
right.
So-
That's great.
And when do you hope to open your restaurant?
We're shooting for February.
Nice.
So
you'll catch some of the ski season.
right.
Yes.
If I can get it done before that, it would be great. But
It takes time.
Yeah, of course.
Excellent.
So not enough time just doing the 2 stores that you already have. Thought that a third one would be.
Well, once you get yourself in this, you just kind of want to do more, new challenge.
I think it's great.
Patrick, if you would just tell us what are the requirements for this first-class liquor license?
The board is here asked to approve a first-class liquor license for the Turquoise Grill restaurant. The owners of the restaurant owe no fees or back taxes to the town for this or any of the other family businesses, and the plans have been examined by the police and fire department, and both are in agreement that it should move forward.
Anybody else from the board have any questions or comments? Is there anybody who's in attendance who has any questions or comments about this application for a first-class liquor license by Turquoise Grill? Hearing none, then we're ready for a motion, please.
Move we approve a first-class liquor license for Holly Kiziltan?
Yes.
Really? The right emphasis?
Yeah.
Okay.
Holly Kiziltan.
And Michael Kiziltan for the Turquoise Grill located at 128 Main Street in the Brooks House.
We have a motion to approve the first-class liquor license for the Turquoise Grill. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Very much.
Appreciate it.
We are ready for a motion to adjourn as liquor commissioners.
So moved.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. So the next matter on the agenda is the errors and omissions to the grand list. And I understand that we have Mr. Fife here today.
Yes, thank you.
Do you want to come to the table? That's a good place.
Okay, the table, that is your recommendation?
Yeah.
Did Russell sit here?
More than once. So, Dan, I'm not sure that we've really had a chance to introduce you to the public at large, so maybe you want to introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
I'm Dan Fife. I'm the assistant assessor for the town, working under Russell Rice and company. Been here a little over a year, and thank you very much.
Excellent. So maybe you could tell us what is the errors and omissions.
Sure, I have a statement written by Russell that he wanted me to read, but there's an attached spreadsheet detailing the error and omissions changes to the 2014 grand list, which is being submitted for your review and approval. There were 4 changes to the value of real properties. One was the result of discovery of an inaccuracy in the description of a renovated building just after the grand list was filed. One was the restoration to the grand list of a building and lot which had been mistakenly eliminated as the result of a subdivision. The third was a similar restoration of a lot which had been lost during the processing of a subdivision and a subsequent sale of one of the resulting lots. The fourth accounts for the removal of a building which had been destroyed by fire. Under the business personal property, there were 8 corrections. These were the result either of late filings or filings corrected after the grand list was lodged, except for the case of Comcast, where figures were provided separately from different sources, resulting in duplication of the property value. The effect on the 2014 grand list is real estate went up by $122,990. The business personal property went up $243,000. The overall result was a lowering of $120,010 to the 2014 grand list.
All right, then. And so is it fair to say, Dan or John or Patrick, this is the final act with respect to the 2014 grand list?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
All right. Anybody on the board have any questions or comments?
I have stupid ones. Is that okay?
Those are our
But
favorites.
if it's a stupid
There's no
question,
stupid questions.
that allows me to have a stupid answer.
Okay.
We had a lot.
We have a lot. John and I always get to ask the stupid questions, so John doesn't look stupid. When it says the name, previous total, new total and difference, does that mean, like, say the first property, Edward Belden, it's gone down 26,200?
Yes.
So, and that's because of current use there in the building?
Well, it could be a combination of the current use and the building adjustment. The building adjustment could be for a variety of reasons. I don't know these particular cases, but it might be a case where a building had been put in as a 2-family, but in fact it should have been a 1-family. That would result in a change.
Okay. What about the business ones down below? Like Arkham? was 14,000 and it's 87. I don't know what late form means.
Late form means it didn't come in time to be appropriately assessed and included.
Okay.
So when it comes in late, we have to treat it as an error and omission.
Okay. So they actually made out.
Well,
Or-
yes, because what we typically do is we will put in what they had last year
Okay.
until we find something different.
Okay. Okay.
Are the businesses all personal property? Are the businesses all personal property?
Yes.
All right, so those aren't changes in the value of the real estate, but actually it's just the business personal property tax.
Yeah.
Yes.
Other questions from anybody on the board? Anybody who's in attendance have any questions? I guess one of the questions that I would ask you to take back, and that maybe we can try to get an answer to over the course of the next week or two, is what changes, if any, we anticipate in the grand list between last year and this coming year, so that we have some sense about how that'll impact the setting of the tax rate.
Yep. And Russell and I, mostly Russell's working on that very thing.
Right, because there are some new properties that have come online, particularly the solar facility off of the highway between exit 2 and 3, and that's going to be generating some significant tax revenue, I think in the range of $50,000, I heard. And we have a series of other properties that have been brought back online. The Brooks House, for example, also is going to be paying more in taxes. So that'll be useful to hear for the next meeting. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other discussion or questions? Then we're ready for a motion, please.
I move to approve the errors and omission to the 2014 grand list as presented.
Is there any further discussion? We have a motion to approve the errors and omissions to the 2014 grand list. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks for coming. Next matter on the agenda is discussion about the West Brattleboro Fire Station. So I guess what we'll do is I'll start by just introducing the topic. And then we'll hear from Fire Chief and Assistant Fire Chief, and then from Patrick as well. Over the course of the period of time when the 2015 budget was rejected at referendum, discussions circulated about various ways that we could respond to the rejection of the budget and what would happen to the police fire project. And one alternative that was discussed in general. It was discussed at meetings that we had with the public about what to do with the budget, and it was discussed at select board meetings, was the possibility of closing Station 2. And in fact, there were a number of people who seemed to express positive view about the possibility of closing Station 2, including, I seem to recall, at least one person on the board. It wasn't really possible for us to assess and really make a decision about that question. Yes, sir. It really wasn't possible to assess and make a decision about whether Station 2 should stay open or closed based on speculation, based upon guesses about its impact on the system. And so we asked the interim town manager and the fire chief to provide us with hard data about the role that Station 2 plays in the firefighting system, including the extent to which it helps to protect and save lives, the extent to which it helps to protect and save property, and also the extent to which its elimination might wind up costing us money anyway in the form of increased fire insurance rates. And so we asked for that data to be gathered up and presented to us so that we would have in front of us some concrete information upon which to make a decision whether we should even think about closing Station 2. And so that's why we're here tonight. So I think what we'll do is we'll start by asking Mike and Pete to talk about the role that Station 2 plays in the firefighting system and our response to life safety and property issues out in West Brattleboro. So why don't you go ahead and talk about Station 2, please.
Thank you. In your packets, the memo that we gave you is quite lengthy and has a lot of stuffs in it. So as I go over that, I'm just going to highlight a lot of it. And if there's stuff that you folks want to go back and ask us about or touch on, we can certainly go back if we don't cover it during this. So as an introduction, records go as far back as 1946 to show that there's been a fire station in West Brattleboro. I think many will remember it as a single bay, single truck station that was in Lewes Amico, the present site of 7-Eleven up off Western Avenue. In 1960, the original, or the present Station 2 was built. It was built as a single station, two-bay station that held 2 trucks. And then in 1977, the second floor addition was put on. So today the station houses 2 engines. One is a frontline truck, one is a reserve piece, and it's staffed 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, always by 2 firefighters. This station has, for a long time, been an essential component in the West Brattleboro Village. For demographics, NFPA tells us that 83% of all the fire deaths in the United States occur in residential occupancies, in our homes. Places that we're supposed to be safe is where most die in the United States. On an average, 2,500 people a year will die in a fire in their home. Also, we're told that groups that are at the most risk for fire-related injuries and deaths include children that are 4 years old or under, older adults that are 65 years old or greater, persons living in manufactured housing, and persons living in rural areas. I tell you this because this is basically the makeup of West Brattleboro. West Brattleboro is predominantly residential occupancies, and it's comprised of all the groups that I just mentioned above, to include Westgate Apartments, which has a lot of children, Melrose Terrace, Garfield Drive, and Glen Park, which is comprised of a lot of older adults, Glen Park and Mountain Home, which is manufactured housing, and then the outlying areas of West Brattleboro is all rural. And as I said, this is one of the higher concentrations of what we consider to be our life hazards. The effects of closing Station 2. Closing Station 2 involves in closing a facility which will result in increased response times, decreased safety in services for the citizens, and those will have a trickle-down effect on other influences. In my opinion, Station 2 is a very critical component of the emergency response throughout the town of Brattleboro, not only in West Brattleboro, but throughout the town, because it provides support to Central Station as they need it, as well as their primary response area, obviously being West Brattleboro. Their first due area for Station 2 runs from Exit 2 on Western Avenue, west on Route 9 all the way to the town line, and then includes all the streets and roads off from Western Avenue to the north and south. And then with the opening of the Citizens Bridge, their response area was increased to include Maple Street up to the Austin School, all of Guilford Street, and everything off from Guilford Street to the town line. Also in the response area, to which these buildings they'd be first due into, comprises there's 3 schools, 3 elderly housing projects, 2 mobile home parks, one of them which is the largest in the state of Vermont, Westgate Apartments, Westbrook Court, Carriage Hill, and Sherwood Circle, all which again are predominantly residential areas. For reporting and response recording purposes, we've divided the town into 6 districts, which is the way we report to the federal government every year. Those 6 districts are the Central District, West, North, South, Interstate 91, and then we track mutual aid calls. In calendar year 2011, the fire department responded to 2,400 calls. 1,129 of those were in the Central District. The next greatest amount was 600, which was in the West District. In calendar year 2012, we responded to 2,222 calls, 1,161 again in the Central District, with 457 in the West District. Again, that number being the second greatest number in the town. In 13, we also see a repeat of this, where the West District responded to 508 calls out of 2,225. So again, the West District being the second busiest district in the town. Eliminating Station 2 will significantly expand the number of times that emergency vehicles will have to respond up Western Avenue, increasing response distances and times. On this slide here, what we're trying to show you, the orangish brown color up there is concentrations of residential areas, with the West Brattleboro station being right there. This being the trailer park, Sherwood Circle. So as you can see, there's a great concentration of residential along Route 9 up in West B's response area. West Brattleboro, it's a difficult area to access with only one main route into the area, that being Western Avenue, Route 9. If this road is compromised in any way, access to the area will have to be from secondary roads, mainly either South Street out of Guilford or to come up over Meadowbrook Road from Upper Dummerston Road. In these larger trucks, these are roads that are very difficult to maneuver, and this will greatly increase response times into West Brattleboro. This isolation has happened in the past due to flooding, motor vehicle accidents, and Western Avenue being blocked by trees and wires down. Snow and ice storms also make travel up Western Avenue slow and difficult at times. Station 2 has always played a major role in maintaining the emergency response to the West End. Through pre-planning and pre-staging of equipment at Station 2, we've always maintained proper coverage for the area. Even at times, we've staged ambulances at the West Brattleboro station when we've had instances where West Brattleboro has been isolated from downtown. If Station 2 is eliminated, this coverage under these circumstances becomes a big concern. Fire doubles in size every minute, and flashover occurs faster than it used to in the past due to the materials and building construction in today's homes. The primary responsibility of the 2 firefighters at Station 2 is life safety. If they pull up to a reported fire or a building fire at West Brattleboro, their main responsibility is search and rescue and to try to get any of the trapped occupants out. If they're told or for any reason believe that someone's still inside the building, They'll stretch a hose line for self-protection and for that of the victims, but their only function is to initiate rescue. Eliminating Station 2 would mean an added response time of 3 to 4 minutes or even more from Central Station. If actions are not taken to avoid a flashover, such as cooling the atmosphere or ventilating the fire, flashover is imminent. This additional response time will allow conditions to go unchecked and rapidly deteriorate, creating an environment that is both not survivable for the occupants and one that firefighters cannot enter. Station 2 also plays an important role in the overall medical response to that end of town, always minutes ahead of the ambulance response from exit 1. Chances of survival for a patient in cardiac arrest decreases 7 to 10% with every minute that passes that they don't receive defibrillation. Survival of a cardiac arrest patient in West Brattleboro would decrease by 20% or greater without a response from Station 2. I'm going to kind of skim over the cost section because I know Patrick is going to cover some of that also in his. But some of the basics, on average, Station 2 costs the taxpayers approximately $12,000 a year to keep open. That is averaging out such things as building maintenance, heating oil, propane, phone costs, internet, supplies, water, and sewer. The only two major capital projects that have taken place in recent history at Station 2 were the replacement of all the windows in 1991 and the front ramp and site drainage work that was done in 2009, and that was at a cost of $19,500. The savings for closing Station 2, I'll let that one go until Patrick does his part. You want to go to the slides for me?
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea.
So this slide, what it's showing is the brown color is the 5-minute response time from Central Station at an average speed of 30 miles an hour. The yellow is a 5-minute response time from Station 2 at an average of 30 miles an hour. The next one. If Station 2 was to close, you can see that a huge portion of the town will be left without a 5-minute response time. One of the other things that I think this slide shows, and you'll see it better on another one, is that Central Station can reach the north and the south parts of town very effectively and very efficiently. If Station 2 is not there, response greatly diminishes, and West Brattleboro basically is left uncovered.
And that is the 5-mile response for Station 1, which does cover both north and south completely. Yep, whereas you can see from the photo it doesn't cover the West Brattleboro area nearly as well.
Okay. And I know Patrick is going to heavily talk about Insurance Services Office, or the ISO. A couple of quick points I wanted to make there. Out of 49,010 fire departments nationwide that received an ISO rating in 2014, only 810 have a better rating than Brattleboro. So in other words, our rating of 3 was topped by only 810 departments nationwide. And we're one of only 2,400 nationwide that have received a rating of 3. So, as you can see, the services that we provide to the town, as well as the tools, if you will, that the town gives us to function and to operate properly certainly has an impact on our insurance ratings in town. A couple of the National Fire Protection Association standards, NFPA. NFPA 1710, which is a standard for the organization and deployment of fire suppression operations, emergency medical operations by a career department. The purpose of the standard is to specify the minimum criteria that addresses the effectiveness and the efficiency of service delivered in protecting the citizens of a jurisdiction and the safety and health of fire department employees. One of those standards in 1710 outlines response times. And what it does is establishes an arrival time for the first due engine company to be within 4 minutes to 90% of the incidents, and 6 minutes for a first alarm assignment. And a first alarm assignment is laid out by NFPA as 2 engines and a ladder truck. It says that standard needs to be met 94% in 94% of the response area. If Station 2 is closed, that standard won't be met. Another standard in 1710 says that they establish an arrival time of the first unit with an automatic defibrillator to be within 4 minutes. This standard, most of the time, will not be met if Station 2 is closed. The Brattleboro Fire Department mission statement says that our essential mission and #1 priority as members of the Brattleboro Fire Department is to provide the best possible services to the citizens of Brattleboro. We will strive to effectively protect lives and property from the effects of fire and all other emergencies, and continually look for ways to improve our services to the people we serve. The closing of Station 2, in our opinion, will result in just the opposite of our mission statement. For at least the past 68 years, the West Brattleboro area and the entire town has been served and protected by Station 2. Over those years, much has changed. The area has been built up, the demographics is different, and construction and furnishings materials inside of houses has changed. The role of the fire service in the community has also changed considerably over the years, and we are called upon for so much more than we used to in years past, which was just to put out fires. This move has caused a significant increase in our call volumes, and we are constantly busier each year. For all of the reasons that we've stated in this presentation, I hope you'll see that Station 2 plays a very important role to the public safety of Brattleboro. We strongly urge and recommend that the station stay open.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Patrick?
Thank you, sir. Okay, so when the select board asked us to take a look at this, Mike and I sort of divided the information up a little bit. I asked him to focus specifically on response times and areas for which he is a subject matter expert. I looked more into the cost and tried to ascertain what would be the impact for insurance ratepayers in Brattleboro, and so that's really kind of the focus of the memo I put together. So I'd like to start by just talking about some of the difficulties in really finally assessing the impact that's going to be felt by any particular insurance ratepayer. It's not something we're going to be able to really assess. It's something we're going to have to accept that we need to speak about somewhat generally, because of the factors that go into setting insurance rates, which would include, among other things, the base cost of insurance for the broker, It would include the homeowner's credit history. It would include the homeowner's use of insurance history. And so there are a variety of factors that would be sort of beyond our reach to see. What is consistent, however, is another factor which goes into setting homeowners insurance rates, which is the community's ISO rating. As Mike pointed out, the town of Brattleboro has a commendable ISO rating of 3. And in fact, I'd like to talk just a little bit about what that specifically means and sort of recognize some of the implications of that. An ISO rating of 3, which, as we pointed out, Burlington, Rutland, and Brattleboro are the only 3 towns or cities in the state of Vermont that have such a high rating. What this says is how this is calculated is based on a variety of factors. About 10% of that rating comes from a community's communications capability. So this is evaluating dispatch and the presence of 24-hour dispatch in the community. It evaluates the existence of a fire alarm system, which Brattleboro has. It evaluates the level of staffing within the fire department. It includes the level of training that staff undertakes and the level of certification that they have. And it includes a real wholesale examination of the capabilities of the fire department. So in addition to communication capabilities, it examines the capabilities of the fire department. And then lastly, it examines the capabilities of the water system. So this is looking at where the hydrants are located in town, the pressures that those hydrants are able to deliver, and the volumes of water that are able to be put towards a fire at any one point in time. All of these factors are evaluated by an independent entity known as the Insurance Services Organization, and the result of that is a rating that is a part of how insurance rates are set at any given location. That rating of 3, there's actually a little bit more to it than that. A given location has a rating of 3 if it is within 5 road miles of a fire station and is within 1,000 feet of an acceptable water supply, as would be provided by a hydrant, or in some cases a dry hydrant. So having both of those conditions would leave you in a 3. If you are merely within 5 miles of a fire station, but not within the water district and not within 1,000 feet of an acceptable water source, you would be considered a 3Y. But either which way, that's going to have fairly negligible impact upon your insurance rates. There are those folks, even in Brattleboro, whose residence exists beyond 5 road miles of a fire station. There are only 50 of them, and they're in various sections of far west Brattleboro, in the sort of more remote and more rural sections. There are 50 of those locations presently. Our inquiry to ISO initially was, if we were to close Station 2, what does that do to our rating? And after they ran some modeling, what they were able to tell us is that ultimately, while it would affect our sort of scores, it wouldn't affect them to the degree that it would change our overall ISO rating. Our ISO rating would remain a 3. So that's kind of good news, particularly for ratepayers in central Brattleboro and north Brattleboro and south Brattleboro. What would happen, though, is that there would be an additional 158 homes in west Brattleboro, and the road names that would be effective are outlined in the memo here, where those folks would no longer be within 5 road miles of a fire station. And so from the slide here that they're showing, this includes all of the homes in the yellow section. And so because these locations would no longer be within 5 road miles of a fire station, it's anticipated that their residential homeowners insurance would grow by approximately 30%. Now, that's going to vary based on some of those factors I mentioned at the onset. Everybody's rates are going to be just a little bit different because their credit histories are going to be different and so on. But it is reasonable to believe that the homes that are shown here in the yellow section would likely experience a rate increase of approximately 30%. So that's one of the findings, I would say, that we came across. What would happen, really, if we were to shut Station 2? Obviously, for folks in the west there, they would experience an increase in their homeowners insurance, and that would be of some consequence. I think another consequence might be that you would end up with a situation where different taxpayers in different parts of the town are receiving fundamentally different qualities of service. Particularly based on response time. I know another point I'd like to make is I know that both Mike and I sort of identified some of the regular operating costs for Station 2, and they're not all that much. It's about $12,200 for fiscal 14. What you'll notice there, though, is there really isn't a whole heck of a lot for building maintenance. There's $580 for building repairs spent in fiscal 14. There isn't a whole lot for building maintenance. And I think one of the things that we have all come to understand is that the sort of one of the guiding factors that led to the police and fire project is that these facilities are aging, and there is a great deal of deferred maintenance that kind of hasn't been taking place. So while it is sort of easy to point at some expenses, what are the sort of regular operating expenses to keep that facility going? There's not that much. It's $12,000, but there really is a cost there that isn't shown, which has been accruing year after year, which has led to this project. So while you can look at these expenses and say, what does it cost to keep Station 2 open? It's only $2, for a $200,000 home. There's a way in which it obviously is more than that, because there's the need to maintain the facility, which is what led to the police and fire project. Just looking at the estimated cost of the police fire project for Station 2, that's more like $1.25 million. For that same $200,000 home, for 20 years, that bond payment would be something in the neighborhood of $18, which is more than $2. I also point out in here that even the bare minimum cost to maintain and accept a safe work environment for the firefighters that live in this facility, Steve Horton, our project manager, estimated it at approximately $238,000 just for bare minimum facility repairs to leave that facility safe for people to be working in. One thing I'd like to point out is that those minimum life safety improvements at Station 2, those don't even cover all of the deferred maintenance. So, I guess in conclusion, our facilities, including Station 2, need to be maintained, and from time to time we need to invest in them. And I think that's ultimately what led to the police and fire project. We've examined the consequence to insurance ratepayers, and that's fairly clear that it would result in a fairly substantial hit to the folks identified in yellow, but ultimately wouldn't raise rates for any of the locations in red.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, and thank you, Mike and Pete, for that presentation as well. I want to make way clear that the board is not considering at this time closing the West Brattleboro Fire Station. So although the presentation has been made in terms of what would happen if it was closed, that's really not an item that is presently on the select board's agenda. Rather, as I said at the beginning of the presentation, there has been significant discussion about, well, we could close West Brattleboro. And we wanted to get concrete data in order to be able to understand the impact of what that would mean. So I know there's a lot of people here, probably a lot of people here who are interested in hearing this presentation, probably fueled in part by the newspaper headline saying that the future of the Station 2 was in question. I don't really think that's the case. And so I'd really like to just make sure that in this next part of the meeting, where questions and comments are taken, that we're really just limiting our questions to the data that's been presented, because there is no particular move or consideration at this point to closing West Brattleboro. We wanted a presentation about its role in the fire system as a whole. So, that having been said, anybody on the board have any questions or comments?
Well, I'd like to clear up a few. Chief, Assistant Chief, how are you? Good presentation.
Thank you.
I was the board member that had the audacity to ask, you know, could we close Station 2? I'm glad we went through this exercise. I think it lends itself to more transparency. It lends itself to me being enlightened on how much Station 2 is appreciated. I think it would be easier to close Academy School than it would be to shut down Station 2. So, but I also feel that that now that we've gone through this, and I'm really going to keep pushing this, that it is unsafe, and we have to get these buildings renovated as soon as possible. So that's where I'll end my spiel.
We're probably going to bring police fire back on the agenda for the 16th in the hopes that the subcommittee will have enough information to be able to present back to us before we work towards finalizing the FY16 budget. So we'll have more time to talk about police fire at the next meeting. Anybody else on the board? Donna?
I also I'm mindful of what an incredible heap of work it is, you know, that when there's a option that's available or that we consider. I appreciate the presentation. I feel like any one of us can now speak to how essential it is to have that station open and functioning. I think, you know, with the weather in Vermont, with just even the statistic about what happens to someone having a heart incident, that 20% of those people who are calling because they're having a heart attack or some incident with their heart are not going to be responded to in the way that they are currently. Traffic patterns, how the time it takes to get there. I feel like it was a really thorough and very useful presentation, and I appreciate you gathering all that information. And I do feel like it helps everybody who's here, it helps everybody who's listening understand that we need to move forward on that. So I actually thank you, John, for bringing that issue to the surface so that we could get all of the information we need. I think it's going to be very helpful to our conversation on the 16th. And I'm just sorry that it's so much work to come and explain the need for that.
Yeah, we got a lot to do.
I have a question. Where would the fire trucks go if there wasn't Station 2? And there's no room on Station 1.
David Cofield asked where do the ducks go, in the winter.
We would have to make the addition at Central a whole lot bigger than it's presently proposed.
Okay.
Because there's another type of analysis, which is what's the proper staffing, should the staffing levels change?
Well, that was my next question.
Right, so go ahead.
Well, my next question was, with the firefighters who are at Station 2, 24/7, what happens to them?
Sure.
You're on thin ice now.
We were asked to come here and speak to Station 2, to the facility. It would be my hope, it would be my intent that the 6 firefighters that, when I say 6, it's rotate through Station 2 over a 3-day period, would just come down to Central Station with those trucks. We still need to provide the same response and the same minimum staffing whether Station 2 is open or not. So those people would just work out of Central Station.
So can you then talk about response to a fire, how many trucks, how many people need to be at an incident, and the limits on when people will actually, firefighters will enter into a building?
Staffing in Brattleboro is 7 people at once, 7 people on a shift. There's 5 downtown and there's 2 at West Brattleboro. Minimum staffing is 6, which is 4 downtown and 2 at West Brattleboro. What we call a stow alarm, which is basically something that the shift should be able to handle on their own quite easily, will usually entail a response of 1 engine in either the ladder truck or the rescue truck. Car fire will get an engine and a rescue. A chimney fire may get an engine and the ladder. If we get a reported fire of any type inside of a building, the response is, presently as we sit, it's both stations go and all 7 people, so it's 2 engines and a ladder. We'll go to a reported building fire, and then anything that they can't handle outside of that, the alarm is upgraded to a second alarm, which calls back all off-duty personnel. Staffing is such that one of the NFPA standards is called 2 in and 2 out, which means that for a minimum of 2 people that are inside a hazardous atmosphere, so it can be 2, it can be 6, there has to be 2 people outside the building to be their rescue team. Because of the way we're staffed and the way we're set up, as I'll explain it in the presentation, in West Brattleboro, if there is reason to believe, a good reason to believe that there's an occupant trapped inside of a building that's on fire, those 2 guys in West Brattleboro will go in before the truck from Central gets there to try to initiate a rescue. And truly, from the beginning, as I stated, that is one of obviously, the primary function up there is if a rescue needs to be made, they're going to do it.
But it's not optimal. I mean, that's
No,
not a good
it's
situation.
not. The numbers are not optimal.
So a few years back, we were asked to look both at staffing levels, and we looked at our equipment and what we needed in the town of Brattleboro to provide adequate services to the town. At the time, we had 5 engines, and your question about what would we do with the other 2, we looked hard and decided that we could drop to 4 engines and adequately protect the town. But if we were to drop below 4 engines, it would have an adverse effect on the community. So kind of along with staffing and back to apparatus, it's very important that we maintain 4 engines and would have to find homes for them at Central Fire Station if Station 2 were to be closed. And additionally, to answer the question, a side note to the question about staffing, we often nowadays are out on more than one emergency at a time, and we looked at last year's numbers, and 235 times we were at 2 consecutive calls, 25 times we were at 3 consecutive calls, and 4 consecutive calls 5 times. So a total of 515 calls were affected by the fact that we had to split our staffs in order to handle emergencies that were overlapping. And that says a lot about the importance of having those folks on duty and available immediately.
I mean, a good example of that is the storm the other day from noon on Wednesday until roughly 8 o'clock on Thanksgiving morning. The shift that was on duty did over 40 calls, and that was, they were mostly all storm related and done pretty much just by the 6 guys that were on duty because they could split their staffing because of the response protocol that we have.
Thank you. Other questions from anybody on board or comments? All right, so if there's any questions or comments from anybody who's in attendance, this would certainly be an appropriate time. Ms. Davison?
Hi, Judy. I don't think it's on, but that's all right.
It only is for the TV.
It's just for the TV. Great. So I'm Judy Davidson, and I'm a town rep from District 3, and I want to, again, thank you for the excellent presentation that you did. It really has been incredibly thorough and very enlightening to me. And I think I've talked to some people in Westby, and one of the comments that was made, was, how would the people in Westby feel if they were sort of second citizens to the people in the rest of the town. So I've been thinking about that since I'd heard that from people in Westby anyway. We don't need anything more to divide the town. But I was very appreciative of you of all the work you did, Patrick, in terms of the insurance. And I'm asking specifically now about if you could specify in terms of the health and safety issues that would need to be done on the Westby fire station, what would that 237 amount to? Because that's certainly very different than 1.2 million. So could you be explicit about what that amount, what those...
So that's really beyond the scope
of
what's on for tonight's agenda.
Okay.
Maybe it'll come on for discussion at the next meeting, but I really don't want to move into a discussion of what are the renovations going to cost or repairs there. Okay. So we'll answer that. Yeah, please come back.
Great.
We've got it on the agenda.
Thank you all.
Ms. Pickering.
My name is Ron Pickering. I live on Abbott Road in West Brattleboro. I'm here this evening to present to the board over 303 names that are signed on petitions to keep the West Brattleboro Fire Station open. I didn't go door to door, but we certainly can do so if someone on the folks on the board change their mind about wanting to close. I read the article in today's paper, Patrick, and I think the addition of Abbott Road needs to take place there because, according to Allstate, my homeowner's insurance, mine would go up to $200 a year. And there's 19 homes on Abbott Road. I think the fire chief and assistant chief have explained very well the need for Station 2. Response times, that's key. How do you put a dollar amount on life? I understand taxes. I pay them here in town. Are they high? Yep. But I'll continue to pay them because I don't want to lose the fire protection and service that we now have. My father had a heart attack in 2005. First truck on the scene, West Brattleboro. Saved his life. You can't put a dollar value on that, folks. I would hope that if another discussion is brought about to want to close the Westby station, that it's well publicized so that I and others who live in West Brattleboro and in the town can circulate more petitions to get them around. I think that instead of spending probably an enormous amount of time on talking about maybe closing or whatever needs to be done, the station needs to be renovated, no question. That was built back in the 60s for free, basically, because my father worked on that when he worked with the fire department. I think that we need to find ways here in town to bring manufacturing back. I have stressed that several times to Patrick and to others in town. How do we do it? I wish I had the magic wand to wave to do that. But we do need manufacturing to come back to town. We need good paying jobs. Small businesses are good, don't misunderstand, but they don't pay the wages that we really need to bring this town back up to where it should be. So with that, thank you for your time, and I would like to present these to whoever wants to. Maybe John Allen would want them.
I would love to see them.
We'll take them,
Yeah,
you can give them to us, we'll look through them, but Jan will
Thank you.
hold on to them. Thank you, Ms. Pickering.
Can I just add one thing? I just want to make sure that in what David's remark was, too, a little while ago, that nowhere in any discussion has it been said that we have been contemplating closing Station 2.
This is called preventative maintenance.
Right. So, I don't want you to think that people were left out of any discussion.
No.
Okay.
I think my discussion with you, I've had with you several
Yes.
times.
Yep. Good.
Anybody else? Ms. Miller.
Nancy Miller, West Brattleboro, District 1. There is an elephant in the room because it has been implied very specifically by people on the Fire and Police Committee and within the fire department that we could close West Brattleboro, that it could happen if we aren't allowed to renovate it for 1.2+ million. And it's been very, very heavily implied by various people. Maybe it's not stated outright, but very heavily implied. And I just think that needs to be brought up. I have no axe to grind with the fire department. I think this presentation has been excellent and has brought a lot of things to light for people. I mean, I've been saying a couple times, I know, that our fire insurance policies would go up. And people brushed it off until Patrick finally made this, and with Russell Rice's help, this analysis. But I just think it should be acknowledged that it was heavily implied that we could close it if we're not allowed to renovate it for $1.2 million.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Mr. Emery.
Is he going to be long-winded?
Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is David Emery. I am not a resident of West Brattleboro, but I am concerned about their lives and their property. Although I certainly am the former fire chief. I worked for the fire department from 1970 to 2007, and I had a wonderful opportunity to work at Station 2 for lots of years. Back in the days when there was only one of us out there, and it's a safety issue, and one of the best things that's happened when we've maintained minimum of 2 people at that station. I think Mike and Pete did an excellent job with their presentation tonight. I certainly probably couldn't have done as well if they'd asked me for their help. But I do want to mention a couple of things. I helped build the addition on the 2nd floor of that station, so I'm very familiar with that. I'm not a carpenter, none of us are carpenters, and we had one carpenter that attempted to train us as we built that. And as a builder might recognize, that's not a good way to build a building. I won't tell you what the real compact of what's in that side of that, inside the walls, but it might be some aluminum and glass bottles that might be down inside there. But needless to say, the building is probably not, it wasn't built as a fire station, it is built as a garage. And it's not safe now. It was awful then, but it provided the service, and now we really need to upgrade that. I'm happy to hear that you said that you were not anticipating on closing that, although I would agree that the concept that was out there was not that there was a move to suggest closing that station. And that would be very serious for everyone. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that Mike and Pete said about this manpower, where they have a full crew of 7. That's 7 people to try to extinguish a fire. If you take out that 7 and one guy's on a day off, that leaves you 6. He said they're responding with 3 vehicles, 2 engines and a ladder. That's 3 people that are committed to driving those and staying with that truck, with the trucks to get the water to get hitched to the hydrants. So that leaves you 3 people to start fighting the fire. One of them needs to be the incident commander. So that now leaves you 2 people with a full complement of 6 to produce that. So at the best, they're going to save your lives, hopefully save your lives, and maybe be able to get the fire extinguished quick. So it's important. 7 people is not a lot to do the job they do. They have a great staff. Their staff is highly trained. They do things that are just far impeccable, and I can tell you from a fact, after 37 years on the job, that I'm still a firefighter. I'm proud to have been there. I'm proud to be from Brattleboro, and I certainly can. You can't close Station 2 now or ever. There was talk about building the 3rd station. Maybe that's what we should be talking about, is building the 3rd station on Putney Road and adding manpower. That's the way things should be going, not talking about going down. I'm long-winded, so other than you, I'm going to say thank you. Keep up your good work.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Dave. Anybody else want to speak? Yes, ma'am. I don't know your name.
Claire Markey.
Oh, Ms. Markey.
I'm Claire Markey. I live on Sunset Lake Road. I just have a story about the fire department that I would like to tell. I was in my garden one day, and a man in a truck missed the curve, and he ended up almost on top of me, bleeding and in need of help. And when I called 911, the first people there to help him was the fire department. The fire trucks came, the firemen came, they stopped the bleeding, they had his arm in a cast, everything was all under control, and then the ambulance and police arrived, which I think our ambulance and police are wonderful. But the firemen were there, and that's why I'm talking about the response time. I'm on Sunset Lake Road, and see, if it weren't for that close fire station right there, they wouldn't have been there so quickly. And there's all woods there. The truck was still going. The firemen knew enough to take the keys and shut it off. But there could have been a fire. All the trees could have gone down. Everything could have been more catastrophic. But instead, it was very peaceful. They took care of everything. And I think one life, just losing one life because we closed at a station, isn't worth it. It could be your own. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Claire.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else have any comments or questions? I want to thank everybody for coming out and listening and participating in this discussion. I think it was an important thing for us to look at. Thank you, Chief. Thank you. Thank you, Assistant Chief. Thank you, Patrick. We're going to segue right into a budget discussion, so if anybody's interested, please feel free to stay.
Watch, this is going to clear the house.
We certainly we're encouraging people to come and participate in our budget discussions, and now is at least a preliminary chance. So what I'm going to do is just present an overview of where we've been in our budget discussion so far. We've had 2 drafts of an FY16 budget presented to us by the interim town manager. At this time, the budget stands at approximately $15,400,000 and change $1,000. There's $15,443,373 in the cover memo that was presented, and a little bit different number, about $18,000 less in the budget itself. And essentially, what we've been working off of is a level service, level funded budget. Essentially, what we've put together and what we've been working on is a budget that moves forward the status quo from this year to next year and leaves services essentially the same. As we've said a number of times, our ability to do that at about the same dollar figure is facilitated in part because we need to move to pay-as-you-throw beginning in July 2015, and that means we're going to have to be selling garbage bags or stickers or however we're going to work that system so that people are paying for disposal of trash into the solid waste system, into the dump, whereas previously it's been wholly funded by taxes. During our budget discussions, we've had presentations from all department heads who've walked through the budgets that they presented, and there have been some line items that have increased to reflect actual costs. There have been some line items that decreased, but overall things have remained relatively stable, with the exception of the fact that wages go up under our labor agreements, and other employees besides those who are covered by collective bargaining agreements are also going to be getting raises commensurate with people who are covered by collective bargaining agreements, and that essentially takes up the money that we're going to be bringing in through pay-as-you-throw. From what I can tell from having gone through probably now 4 or 5 hours worth of budget meetings, 4 or 5, 6 hours worth of budget meetings and presentations, is that the primary issues that are open right now are really items where we're considering adding money to the budget rather than pulling more money out of the budget. We've got what is a very lean capital spending plan currently proposed, except for some very big ticket items. So we heard presentation that made it pretty clear that we need a grader and we need 2 dump trucks, and we're only getting ready to buy 1. And the grader costs $340,000, and one of the dump trucks costs $208,000. And so the initial budget that was presented to us cut some other capital items that had been requested by department heads. It cut money for paving, it cut sidewalk money, it cut money for a police cruiser. And I think the primary items that really remained open as of the end of our last meeting last Tuesday were whether we were going to add money back for more paving, whether we were going to add money back for sidewalks beyond the carryover sidewalk money from last year to this year, whether we're going to buy a second cruiser rather than dropping down to a 1 cruiser rotation, whether we're going to put new windows into the Gibson-Aiken Center, since it sounds like we're heating the outside rather than the inside near that facility. And then how much money we're going to decide to take out, if any, from the unassigned fund balance, our surplus, in order to help to defray some of those expenses, and how that money will be applied. And I think that's really where we stand right now, and I think from what I heard at the last meeting, we're substantially in agreement at this point about how we're going to proceed. So I would invite comments from anybody on the board about whether I got that wrong in one way or another. And then I really want to spend some more time, after having just presented that in public, to inquire about how we want to proceed going forward. Because in years past, we've lined up, I don't know, 5, 10, 15, 20 items and voted on them one at a time. Are we going to cut this? Are we going to cut that? Are we going to cut this? Are we going to add this back in? But at this point, I'm not really aware that there's that sort of line item editing that we're thinking of doing to the budget, because it's really already been done. And other than those items, cruiser, paving, sidewalk, the windows at Gibson-Aiken Center, and the surplus, the only other items that we really need to think about are the pool, and we don't have the data for that yet, because the pool is leaking water, a lot of water. and it's going to take $400,000 and change to fix the pool. And the question is whether we're going to tend to it now or later, and are we going to do it in pieces, and are we going to try to raise some funds, not through the budget, to try to help repair the pool. And then also recognizing that it's difficult to spend down the surplus beyond the 10% guideline that we've set for ourselves, because we also are facing probably $400,000 or $500,000 worth of work on life safety issues that has to be done at the municipal center. And we also are facing the police fire facility issues that remain open that won't be discussed tonight any further. So do we want to set another budget meeting for next Tuesday the 9th to get the rest of the information on these issues and to vote on these issues so that we can have a budget finalized for the 16th to consider in public and vote on? Do we want to vote on these issues tonight? Do we want to vote on them 2 weeks from now? That's the question.
When is our next police fire meeting?
Friday.
Friday. And then they're going to come to us on the 16th. I think that's a biggie as far as the budget is concerned. So I would like to definitely hear from them first before we voted on anything. So, and then that'll give us time to get more information on the other items that we need. But I don't want to go into it so quickly just to wrap it up. I really want to spend some time to think about it. Last year we did a lot of work, and I think that's helping us this year. So I think, and I agree with David that we did the line item thing, and that just killed us. So I think we can eliminate that end of it and really start looking at the bigger picture. But I would just like a little bit more time to process the news that's going to come out of those, because we are adding and we're not subtracting. So
I think that's wise.
I agree. I'm not remembering when we're likely to get the information about the pool.
There's Carol.
Hey, Carol.
We asked Carol to get it for us and didn't give her a specific date. So
Right.
Carol, can you?
she was going to give it to us ASAP.
Got it in her pocket.
I wish I had it in my back pocket, but I don't. I did speak with Aquatics Group last Wednesday, and we are going to talk via telephone next Wednesday, the 10th, and I should have something in writing by December 12th.
Carol, can you tell them just real quickly, the audience, how many gallons we're losing?
In the ballpark of 700 and 750,000 gallons. It's a 300,000 gallon pool.
A year.
A year.
Season.
A season.
It's empty in the winter.
It's going somewhere.
All right.
Thank you.
When are we going to know about the municipal center?
That's a good question. I would expect probably I would like to think no later than the first meeting in January would we be able to talk about. I think we've got some good preliminary numbers. They're almost more than preliminary. It's looking like that's going to be about a $450,000 project.
Okay, so does that mean we can't factor that into the next FY16?
Speaking to timing, and there's another meeting coming with the Division of Fire Safety this next Thursday. So this is not just set. And based on discussions both with Steve Horton and with the folks at GPI Construction, the most cost-effective way to approach the life safety issues here at the Municipal Center are to do it all at once. It would be roughly a 3-month project. It would be in the ballpark of $450,000. With that said, it appears like the Division of Fire Safety would be tolerant of us phasing some of that in over the course of 2 years, but there are certain things they've expressed to me an interest in certain items being done first. Right off the bat, they're indicating to us that our existing fire panel is inadequate. Next, we would be moving into a wholesale sprinkler system for the entire building, which would not allow us to capitalize on the existing system. The existing system is inadequate and would need to be replaced, which would also require, among other things, a new connection to the water main, because the water supply coming into the building is inadequate to fund the sprinkler system that is necessary for the whole building. So without going into some of the details which are still in flux, I'm hoping to be able to come back to the board. If something can be put together for the 16th, that'd be great, but I'd be more inclined to think something in the first meeting in January is where a proposal could be
okay, but how
put forward.
how does that factor into what we're deciding right now?
Well,
that's my ultimate question.
If the board saw it as most beneficial to do the project all at once and not to do it over a series of years, one way you might consider funding that is with fund balance. But of course, there are a lot of capital needs for the town, and the life safety improvements here at the municipal center is just one need. There are obviously many, and so if the board said, okay, we'd like to do some of it now and do some of it in next fiscal year, then some of that would need to be added to this budget.
I guess was my ultimate question.
Okay.
Other questions from the board? Hi, Mrs. DeGray. Was that your hand?
Yeah.
Okay, well, you're not on the board anymore. I'll get you in a minute.
Sounded familiar, huh?
Yeah, looked familiar anyway. I'm sorry. When do we have to, remind me, when do we have to take the vote on the budget in order to get it in the town report? Because that's really the question, right? When we have to be camera ready to go to the town report.
January.
Warnings approved by between January 22nd and January 30th.
Okay.
We got all kinds of time.
Great. So we can make a final decision on the 6th or the 13th of January and be in time. Okay. Any other questions from anybody on the board at this point?
No.
Dick?
Oh, I wouldn't have called on him first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Listening to your discussions, I'm glad I'm sitting here, at least right now. But a couple of things that I think that you should ponder. First and foremost, I guess, why stick $430,000 into this facility? If the police and fire department, or the police department is going to move out of this facility, this is a pretty huge facility to house the departments that we have left. And maybe the presentation that the fire department just made about Station 2, somebody should look into, is there a space downtown or close to downtown where we could actually move the municipal center to at a much more affordable rate. This building is like a black hole. And all the money that has been thrown at it over the years, and we're still throwing more money at it, and we need to throw more money at it based upon that study that was given to us this spring. So I think that you should take that into consideration. I don't think I've ever heard anybody talk about moving the municipal center, but if the police department is going to move out of here, then we don't need this huge facility to house the departments that we have. They're actually very small in personnel in terms of the service that they provide the community, and we could get by with a much smaller building. And maybe we should spend some time looking at that option before we start throwing $400,000 in next year and another couple $100,000 a few years down the road. As for your budget now, difficult when you get to that capital plan. But I'm an advocate of, if you're going to use that undesignated money, to make purchases in the capital plan. You found out what happened when you took that $312,000 or $320, whatever the number is, that you didn't use for the skating rink. You put it into the revenue line item, and guess what? You have to make that money up the following year. Luckily, pay-as-you-throw is coming along, and that's going to soften that blow a little bit. But I'm an advocate, if we're going to have to go out and buy a $360,000 grader, we have the money on hand to pay cash for. And we should pay cash for it. It saves the taxpayers money. But you also have other items in there, and so you are going to end up picking and choosing. As for the pool, there should be a community discussion as to, should we repair the pool? That's a fair question to ask. It is a huge ticket item for something that's open 2 months a year. And it would be unpopular to close it. I understand that. But I don't think that there are any sacred lambs when you're talking about closing or thinking about potentially closing Station 2 and making reductions in staff. I think everything is on the table, and is there a way to fund that, or do we continue to do that for that short period of time that it's open? But I appreciate all the work that you do, and I'm glad that you're sitting there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Anybody else have any comments or questions? Mr. Wilmette?
Yeah, just quickly, the assumptions I think that we're going on for level services, level funding, are basically good ones. I have wondered to myself, and I think this would be a simple answer probably that wouldn't require a half hour to an hour of select board time to hear the report. I have wondered about two things. One is, how many police are on patrol at any given time, and how many patrol cars are there in the inventory of the police department? In other words, is each officer receiving their own car, or are they hot seating the shifts? The other thing I'll hold the rest till later. Thank you.
Thank you, John. We had a pretty good presentation last time about cruisers just to respond, and I think the board came out of that pretty convinced that not having a 2 cruiser rotation is not a good idea.
You can watch on BCTV if you want the information.
Right. Any other questions or comments? So I think what we're going to do at this point, we're not going to schedule a special meeting for the 9th because it looks like we're not going to have information, but we'll put it on the budget for the meeting on the 16th of December. And probably it'll wind up being a short discussion because police fire will probably take up the bulk of that time. And then we'll have to do some work between the 16th and the 6th or the 13th in order to get this finished. Any other questions from the board or anybody who's in attendance about the budget? Excellent. Thanks for everybody who stayed for that. The next matter on the agenda is the Energy Committee report. I think they did. That's a communication issue as well, so it'll be on next time too.
Really?
Yeah. If you all want to introduce yourselves, what I'll note is that we received in our binders pretty comprehensive Energy Committee annual report, and I know that all select board members have had a chance to review it. And so, we'll ask you please to give us the highlights and to speak to the public, but we don't need it, read line by line.
Right.
Also, would you introduce the other members of the committee that are also in the audience?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Paul Cameron, Town Energy Coordinator. Lester Humphreys, Chair of the Energy Committee.
And Jason Cooper, member of the chair, and member of the
member of the chair.
Yes, this one.
Michael Boswell, member as well.
Ann Brinton, also a member of the committee. Kathleen Knight, member of the
Tad Montgomery, number.
So what we'd like to do tonight is to give you some background on the Energy Committee and particularly some trends that we have noticed with the energy consumption and costs in town facilities, give you some brief updates on some major projects that we've been working on, and finally a recommendation for how we could save even more energy and money going forward. So just to start with a little background on the committee, the Select Board established the Brattleboro Energy Committee in 2009, expanded its membership to 10 in 2012 and to 11 in 2014. And we currently have 10 members. We have an open seat. If anyone is interested in joining us, we'd be glad to have you apply. The mission of the committee is to assist Brattleboro residents, businesses, and town government in reducing energy consumption and costs through conservation, increased energy efficiency, and conversion to renewable energy sources. And just to give you a little context, we wanted to show you some of the town and state energy and climate goals. These are 3 goals from the 2013 town plan. The first goal is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in Brattleboro to 30% below 2010 levels by 2030, and emissions from municipal buildings and operations 20% by 2030, and to increase the percentage of weatherized homes and apartments to 50% of all units by 2030. And the state has set some equally ambitious goals to weatherize 80,000 homes by 2020, reduce carbon emissions 75% by 2050, and finally to produce 90% of our energy needs from renewable energy sources by 2050. So as I mentioned earlier, we want to focus on some major cost trends that we have noticed over the past few years. And one of the really positive trends that has stood out is that the streetlight costs are down 33% since 2010, with an annual savings of over $81,000. And Steve Barrett, Public Works Director, is here and can speak to the streetlight project that was done, and also the savings that have occurred at the Public Works Garage, which its energy costs have gone down 27% since 2010.
Thank you. Steve Barrett, Director of Public Works. Real briefly, we work with the Energy Committee to analyze the streetlights in town and to actually decrease the number of lights. And there was a big change. We did have a lot of discussion with residents and neighborhoods, but there's less streetlights, and the power consumption is so much less too. I think it was successful. I think the shielded LED lights were different, and it took people a little time to get accustomed to them, and in some cases, you know, it's a different type of light, so that was successful. At Public Works Department, we've also worked with the group to increase our efficiency. Our boilers are hot water now. We've insulated some pipes based on a recommendation of the committee. We've also done some insulation and some seals around our garage doors. Then over time, we have replaced all our garage doors and windows a little bit at a time. So it's been successful.
That's great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Another success story has been in the transportation center. The energy costs have gone down 12%, annual savings over $5,000. That's mostly from a conversion to LEDs that took place using ERA funding a few years ago. And one kind of negative trend that we noticed was that the wastewater treatment plant energy costs have gone up 13% since 2010. Annual cost increase of over $31,000. And we're speculating that this is at least partly because when the plant was rebuilt, it was rebuilt to handle more wastewater. So it's a larger facility and it has more equipment that uses electricity in particular. But we feel that there are numerous opportunities for bringing that cost increase down, and we're working with Efficiency Vermont to identify measures that we can take to reduce the energy costs there.
Okay, now we're looking at a graph here which we put together which shows the overall cost of energy by fuel type. You can see the different fuels there. We had a nice drop because of the Honeywell project between 2001 and 2010, and for the most part we've leveled off. Some things are in the works to have the trend continue to go down. The select board has approved a budget for energy audits. Energy efficiency, we feel, will go a long ways to getting us back on the track of reducing our fuel uses. Our carbon dioxide emissions are going, after a nice drop after the Honeywell project, are starting to go up again. This is mostly because our electric use, which is low carbon, has been going down while our fossil fuel use has been going up. Again, ways that we can address this are efficiency, weatherization, those kind of basic things. Continuing to do the things that Steve's been able to do in Public Works Garage. And also switching to heat pumps wherever we can for heating and new technology. Switching to heat pumps will move us from fossil fuels to electric, and it happens to be the cheapest form of heating right now. So there's numerous opportunities there.
Lester, can I just ask one quick thing? How do you measure the carbon? I mean, how do you know that there's more being?
If we go back 2 slides, you can see the number of gallons. This is the cost by fuel type.
Okay, so you just
So we get a number off the bills for all the town. There's the number of kilowatt hours, number of gallons, and we can convert that into carbon.
Okay.
As a percentage of town budget, a hot topic here is we've gone from 8.2% down to 7.6% or so. You can see from 2001 to 2010, the red there was a big drop in costs, and the blue is then adding back in the cost of the Honeywell project. That loan is going to be paid off in 9 years, and so that's going to be a real nice drop. Go to the next slide. And then here is the energy savings impact on the overall budget. And this has been adjusted for weather and adjusted to the fiscal 2014 fuel prices. So without these energy improvements that happened in the past, we'd be looking at trying to come up with another $131,000 in this year's budget. Next.
So we wanted to give you just a quick updates on some of the projects that we've been working on. As you know, we received a $10,000 grant from Efficiency Vermont for the town's participation in the Vermont Home Energy Challenge, and we've used that money to retrofit 39 decorative street lights with LEDs. We insulated the heating pipes in the Public Works Garage, installed an LED light and motion detector in the Municipal Center, and programmable thermostats in the water treatment plant with an estimated annual savings of $53.30. The town has signed a contract to purchase net metering credits. Sorry.
The town has signed a contract for purchasing 500 kilowatts worth of solar credits, which should give us an estimated annual savings of about $16,250. Also, the more we are able to shift over to electric use, electric has basically a 0 carbon footprint, or pretty close to that, and so it substantially reduces the carbon that you saw us producing on that graph. The next project that we have completed. Pardon? So this is a picture of the solar farm that we are buying power out of, and this is going to be going live on December 12th, and so we should be purchasing approximately half of the town's power consumption through this farm starting then. The next project is that we were able to get installed through a grant from the Vermont Agency of Commerce, 2 electric vehicle chargers in the town parking garage. Since August 15th, they have provided approximately 1,800 miles worth of transportation for people who have come into Brattleboro and spent time in our downtown while they have been charging, so an added benefit to that.
This is just a photo of the charging stations. In the area of transportation also, the Energy Committee has been working with a group called the Brattleboro Transportation Roundtable, which is a group of larger businesses that are promoting alternative commuting, such as walking, biking, carpooling, and using the bus. And the participating businesses distribute a commuter survey to their employees and receive an action plan based on the results of the survey. And we're now a year into that program, and we'll be giving out a follow-up survey to measure the progress.
I'd like to just go back very briefly and just encourage us to find a way to get paid for the electricity that is being used to charge up those cars, because the charging station is in the garage, but as I understand it, we pay the electricity bill, and we don't particularly have a system at this point to get paid for those charges. Is that fair to say?
This is true directly. People who plug in are not paying additional for that. It works out to approximately the same amount they're paying for parking. So although those people are not paying for the electricity, the amount they're paying for the parking is more or less covering the cost that they are incurring to the town. So it's not exactly a loss if they're coming into town to charge, and ideally to be shopping as well. It's not really directly a loss.
Well, I think we'd like to just make sure that that issue is followed through, because we've put in the charging stations and we're supplying the electricity, and we should make sure that we're getting paid for people who are charging their cars up at our charging station.
After we installed those units,
whatever it is, you know.
the thought was to monitor it for a couple of months to be able to get a sense as to what those costs actually would be. That might help us to set what an appropriate rate is. And I think there are some options available that we can bring back for putting that in place.
That's what I recall, that we were going to monitor it. So if we can bring that back, that'd be a good thing, please.
And we are continuing to monitor the use there, and we can provide you with exactly how much it's costing the town. A couple of planned projects. As you know, the town set up an energy efficiency fund last March, and the Energy Committee is working on a plan to use part of those funds for additional measures to save energy. What we're recommending is energy audits in 6 municipal buildings, and that's pending an assessment to see if there's any asbestos in the buildings, and some additional measures recommended by Efficiency Vermont. And those audits will provide us with valuable information on how we can best prioritize the funds in the Energy Efficiency Fund for energy savings. Also, we have the opportunity to, as a town, to purchase additional net metering credits to offset our electric use, and one possible source of those additional credits is a system that's being developed on the Wyndham Solid Waste District closed landfill next year. So we're keeping track of what's going on there as a possible source for additional credits.
The next thing is something that we've talked about in the Energy Committee, which is a recommendation. As new capital projects go forward, police, fire, and so forth, we're recommending that we ask the engineers and the architects to, as you go through the budget process, to report back do a life cycle analysis cost, and report back what the cost is and the associated bond payments with the project, but also operating expense and maintenance expense. The true cost to the taxpayer is the sum of those 3 items. And in the case of energy projects, let's take weatherization or additional weatherization, additional insulation, for example. You increase the cost of the project by doing those things, which affects the bond payments. But many of those improvements are cash flow positive, so they decrease the operating expense more than they increase the bond payments or the expense for the projects. And so we're recommending that that calculation be done so that when decisions are made, the lowest impact to the taxpayer is really what goes forward. And this will save us from having to go after the fact and look to do energy audits and improve buildings that are new buildings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last slide.
Anybody from the board have any questions or comments at this point?
Yeah, could you give us a couple examples of the recommendation where in order the decision's made to lower a bond payment, and what's an example?
Okay. Well, additional weatherization, additional insulation on a building. That's the one example I gave. That increases the cost of the building. Better windows, longer term windows, 30, 45-year windows, more energy efficient, and they reduce the maintenance costs for the building. But they increase the upfront cost. Heat pump, we talked about a heat pump boiler in the police fire project. That is more expensive up front, but the engineer for the project, after we asked for this calculation to be done, showed that the payback is 3 years. So where you've got a bond that's a 15-year bond. So the extra cost for a heat pump boiler is going to reduce the energy cost much more than it increases the bond cost, and those kind of things. And what's happened at times in the past is that as the pressure is to push down the cost of the projects, which is appropriate, everybody needs to look at smaller square footage. There's lots of ways to save money on the projects, and as you push on that, wrapped up in that are energy improvements that also get pushed out, and then we end up paying higher energy costs, and we end up paying more as the sum of these three. So I think what we're suggesting is that we need to really look at all three of these costs in a new building, not just the big ticket, what does it cost?
And look at it in terms of the impact on the tax rate, like for each of the years that
Exactly. Yeah. Over time, every year, what's the impact, and let's get the lowest cost. And in the past, it wasn't such an issue. Energy costs were low, so it didn't really change things that much. Well, with energy costs where they are now, it really has an impact, and we need to be looking at the bigger picture. And with computer systems and the way these engineers work and the way the architects work, they have that information. They can spit out these reports.
So it wouldn't, and I'm wondering, well, John left, I can't ask him, about how difficult is it to factor all of that into figuring out the tax rate?
It's math. It's not that difficult.
It's just math.
Yeah, it's just math, right, yeah.
I mean, these guys were really, fantastic with respect to, the advocacy, particularly for energy efficiency issues in the development of the police and fire plans, and made some real decent recommendations that ultimately the project engineers were able to, sort of verify and make recommendations as to how we should move forward. So, what I hear you saying is just smart.
Yeah, and let's formalize it. Let's have this be the way these things go forward with these kind of capital projects.
The thing that I'm thinking about now is in terms of the police fire, one of the ways that the committee has talked about, and the project manager and architects have talked about reducing the cost, is going from 30-year windows to 15-year windows. And that sounded like a good idea to me, not realizing that in 15 years you have to put all the windows in again. But, so there's that cost 15 years from now. But there's also, are there operating expenses and savings?
Well, 30-year windows tend to be more energy efficient than 15-year windows. So, and
so it's not just like the wood doesn't fall off.
You're losing because of the efficiency of the window.
Good.
They've got to cut corners somewhere, and so that's one of them.
That's where they cut, yeah.
And so the idea is sometimes you've got to put off some cost till later, but let's know that that's happening up front. Let's make that part of the report. And in the cases where you're costing you more day one, because the energy costs go more than the bond costs go down, let's save, let's do it right away. Exactly. Let's do the smart thing and make it cheaper day one, and we're saying, let's formalize that so that you guys have the information and to make these decisions rather than just focusing on the cost of the building, construction cost.
Other questions?
No, I want to formalize it, but there are probably
We'll look across the board first. Other members of the board have questions or comments? Anybody who's in attendance have any questions or comments about the Energy Committee's presentation? Mr. Wilmerding.
I remember hearing on the Finance Committee a couple of years ago, now, about an instance that struck me as penny wise and pound foolish, where a large building in the water and sewage treatment area was simultaneously heating itself continually and being cooled by a large amount of water that's flowing through it. And this situation resulted because of a decision to strike or eliminate the building of a small building for a small engine repair in the water and sewage treatment plant. And I was wondering if that's been rectified or if we are still simultaneously heating and cooling that building.
That was in the freshwater facility, and it hasn't changed because the cost of changing it after the fact is too great. That decision was made given the economics of cheap oil back when that building was built, but the economics have changed, and now we're stuck with it until that facility is replaced.
And how long will that be?
It's going to be a while.
Couldn't you still build a small building to do small engine repairing?
We're looking at, and we've been working with the director of that facility, talking about doing that, building a building within the building to have that happen and see if that's cost effective.
Oh, good.
And it's something that with the energy audit that we're recommending happening. It's a complicated building, and it's something that professionals really need to look at and see what are the effects of doing different things. And so we want to see what their recommendations are before we move forward with that.
But we are installing programmable thermostats in that building, which should...
You already did that, didn't you? Aren't they already?
Not yet.
Or wasn't that?
It's in process.
It's in process.
Yeah, I knew that.
Because right now the temperature in the building is staying at operating 68 degrees all the time. So we want to and all millions of gallons of cold water running through the building. So when people aren't working there and we can reduce the temperature, these thermostats will lower the temperature at nights and weekends. And then part of our report and part of our goal here is to report back what was the result of that.
Yeah.
How much money did we save? How much did it cost us? We know that those things are cheap. I think we're going to see a big payback on that one.
Well, one might think of that as an energy sink, or a place where we're losing a lot of energy or where energy is being wasted.
Yeah.
So I would hope that the executive branch could monitor that. The other thing I was wondering is about the schools. I mean, we have very large school buildings in town, and I'm wondering if the schools individually receive reports on their energy usage and trends or changes in their energy usage, and if that's happening as well.
I'm gonna ask that discussion be very brief, because we don't have anything to do with administration of the schools here at the municipal side. So
is that something you have nothing to do with either?
We have nothing to do. We work for the select board. That's a different organization.
Schools are a different municipality.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments from anybody in attendance? Ms. Davis.
I just would like to thank the Energy Committee for all the work you do. I mean, I go to town meeting and, I vote for, the climate protection and all of that, but I didn't realize the extent of the work that you do, and so I'm just very impressed, and I really like this recommendation to, incorporate a life cycle cost. Even if you make a choice to go for something cheaper, you know what you're doing. And so to have that information to make a decision is just excellent. So I just want to thank you all for your work. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Bosworth.
Yeah, Michael Bosworth, Energy Committee member. Just on the question about charging more for a person charging at one of our charging stations, it's an interesting question. I think downtowns can be more attractive if they have some of these charging stations. I know a family down in Massachusetts that feels like Brattleboro is friendly to electric cars, so they do make some decisions like that. So it's like we're in a new world here about electric cars and charging stations and behavior of people. So it's not a cut and dry decision, I think. But so we'll have to we should look at that carefully. So.
Thank you. Anybody else with any comments or questions about the Energy Committee report? Well, thank you very much for coming.
I have a motion.
There's a motion?
Well,
Okay.
in order to formalize this, I'd like to move that we, accept the recommendation of the Energy Committee to incorporate life cycle cost analysis into all town capital projects, including an estimated total tax rate impact. I'd like to add that on a yearly basis that incorporates bond payments, operating expenses, and maintenance expenses.
And that's the thing that's just math, right?
That's the thing that's just math. Yeah. So when we're looking at like a proposal to change the windows in the police fire, we can see whether we're going to save any money by doing it.
A good checkpoint.
Want to read the language of that motion again, please?
You didn't get it?
No.
I move we accept the Energy Committee's recommendation to incorporate life cycle cost analysis into all town capital projects, including an estimate of total tax rate impact on a yearly basis, and including bond payments, operating expenses, and maintenance expenses.
Can I just ask a question? Whose responsibility is that?
Well, it'd be the engineers that were, or whoever's developing the engineers and project managers.
So it's not the Energy Committee that has to...
No. Well,
No, it should be the architects and the engineers that are designing the facility. Those are the experts.
And don't they do that already? And I don't want to be redundant about it, or just,
Not specifically, no.
Okay.
I mean, they have an idea, and but it's not reported specifically to you guys as options are put on the table. Yeah.
I would say that while it sounds like a very good idea, my preference would be to formalize procedure more specifically before we vote on that. Patrick?
I agree. I'm just trying to thinking through the language a little bit. There are a variety of capital purchases that I can imagine, we buy a grader. It's capital purchase. I'm not sure, I think it's a good concept. It might be worth thinking through and bring something back in 2 weeks and at the next meeting.
that's fine with me. If I can get a commitment that we'll have some wording for the next meeting on the agenda.
I'll move to table it to the 12/16 meeting.
Do we have to vote on the table?
Yeah. Is there any discussion on that motion to table? All right, all those in favor of tabling Mr. Scholl's motion until 12/16, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? So we'll take up on 12/16 that motion. Patrick, if you can
Squeeze all the
address,
problems
if you can address the issues between now and then, and if you can't get them done by then, you'll report back on 12/16.
10:40.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on, or any motions, unanticipated motions on the Energy Committee report? All right. Well, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
So the next item, Paul, don't leave, is your request for a town meeting article. So if you would please tell us what your town meeting article request is.
So Brattleboro Climate Protection is asking the Select Board to place our annual funding request on the March representative town meeting warning. And this year, we're asking again for a $10,000 appropriation for fiscal year 2016. And I would just say briefly that I think this appropriation has been a good investment for the town, in that Brattleboro Climate Protection has spearheaded several projects that have resulted in substantial savings to the town, including the Honeywell project, the Streetlights project, and the Home Energy Challenge grant, just to name a few. And I would like to thank the town for its support for our program, and thank you for considering our request to place this item on the town meeting warning again this year.
Any questions or comments from the board?
I was just going to make the motion quickly and get it up there. To add the following article to the representative town meeting warning for March 2015, to see if the town will raise and appropriate a sum not to exceed $10,000 to assist in funding Brattleboro climate protection for fiscal year 2016, July 1st, 2015 to June 30th, 2016.
Is there any discussion from anybody on the board, or any questions or comments?
Do we need to wait for...
No. Is there anybody who's in attendance who wants to comment or question on this matter? Yes, sir.
You can't comment on it.
I'll be very quick. I just want to say that Paul, working with the Energy Committee, has been an amazing asset, and really we wouldn't be able to do much of what we've been able to do without his help and his feet on the ground working with the details of what we've been able to accomplish as a committee.
Yeah. On a follow-up on that, when it was first formed in 2009, right?
Brattleboro Climate Protection was formed in 2002.
Right. Or 2002, that's right. I didn't know where it was going to go. And then when you came on board, I still didn't know where it was going to go. I'm glad we did it.
Still don't.
No, I do. I do know where it's going. And I'm really glad that we did it, because I think it was, for the $10,000, it's money well spent. And I do believe we get it back.
Well, thank you.
Any other comments or questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of placing this first article on the town meeting warning for March 2015, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Next.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just 37 more articles.
Okay. So the next matter on the agenda is
These people.
the Downtown Alliance, formerly known as Building a Better Brattleboro, work plan, budget, and town meeting article. I want to thank everybody from Downtown Alliance for their perseverance. Looks like you all got here early and waited us out. So if you all want to take the table, that'd be great. If only some of you want to take the table, that's okay too.
We got 7 or 8 remaining, so.
Well, if you all want to gather around the table, that works for us. And if you'll introduce yourselves, please, when you sit down.
I need to get my discipline.
I understand.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
I understand.
Good evening, I'm Matt Livingston. I'm the president of the board of directors of the Downtown Alliance, formerly known as Building a Better Brattleboro. And I'll let the fellow board members introduce themselves.
I'm Alex Jury, the vice president of the Downtown Alliance.
I'm Rod Francis, and this is a new role. I'm an ex officio director of the Downtown Alliance.
And Dick DeGray, treasurer.
Do any other board members who are in the audience want to introduce themselves?
I'm Rory Day, board member. And John Hatton, board member. Greg Gordon, board member.
Excellent. Thank you for being here. And before we start the discussion, I know that Kate O'Connor's got a disclaimer that she needs to make.
Oh, I know.
I need it on record. I'm going to recuse myself from the discussion because I represent my employer, the Chamber of Commerce, as a non-voting member on the Downtown Alliance board. And my employer, the Brattleboro Chamber of Commerce, is also a property owner, so we pay into the special assessment that funds the Downtown Alliance. So I'm just going to sit here quietly.
No, if you have any questions, feel free to participate, but we understand you won't vote. So, I want to thank you very much for the materials that you provided to us. The explanation and the work plan really provided a very different sort of overview and a vision than we've seen, I think, in years past, and it was very, very helpful. So if you would talk to us a little bit about what you're here to ask for.
Certainly. Just in the interest of making sure that folks understand where the Downtown Alliance gets its funding from, we are funded by Chapter 15 of the Code of Ordinance, which allows for a special assessment to be placed on property owners in the Downtown Improvement District. And so what we're here to ask for today is a budget for the fiscal year 2016 that reflects the budget that has been approved by our members, who are mostly property owners in the Downtown Improvement District, the people who will be paying the special assessment. So there's this circular tax process that occurs with the Downtown Alliance and how we're funded to do improvements in the Downtown Improvement District. This year that budget is, or the requested budget is $78,000, which is a flat request to the prior year, the current year that we're in. And you have the details in front of you, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have about how we're going to be spending that money.
Well, maybe you could just briefly, for the benefit of anybody who's still watching and for the benefit of the discussion, just talk with us about the major programs that you plan to move forward with, and also just talk with us a little bit about the largest single line item, which is for some hire that is yet to happen, I expect.
Yes. The Downtown Alliance has a staff member, and that staff member most recently was the downtown coordinator for the Downtown Improvement District in the town of Brattleboro. That is our largest budget item. This budget request year, it is not as large as it used to be. We have moved it from being, for those built-in staffing and non-improvement costs, as if you might look at it that way, from 60% of our total budget request down to about 42% of our budget request. So it's not as large as it used to be, but it's also not a full-time job. But we are asking for approximately, I think the total value of that was $25,000 in staffing costs. Hold on, let me just pull my sheet out here. But all of our fixed costs, our space, our heating, our cooling, our internet, our phone, all that other stuff, our insurance comes out to about $41,500 of the $78,000 that we're asking for. The remainder of the budget request is going to go into several different programs within three of our very specific committees: our promotions committee, our design committee, and our economic development committee. Our promotions committee is asking for $8,000 for two programs, one of which is a digital presence program, and that is to enhance our digital presence on our website and for folks who are visiting Brattleboro. We're also looking for $3,800 to do some enhanced marketing programs for the Downtown Improvement District. The Economic Development Committee is probably our most creative committee as far as what we want to do and how we want to go outside of the boundaries of what we've typically done. The committee chair for that has requested $4,000 to do a periodical article placement program. We're going to see if we can get people to write about Brattleboro and get placement in large periodicals outside of the region, so the New York Times, Boston Globe, that kind of thing. As well as the second project that we're looking at is an incubator development project, and we're looking at partnering with BDCC and some other entities in the town to see if we can, or in the region, to see if we can develop an incubator, a business incubator in downtown Brattleboro. We're not asking for a lot for that, just $3,500. It would be a portion of the overall cost, but it's something that we're pretty excited about. Finally, the Design Committee, which is asking for the bulk of the non-organizational committee dollars. These are the things that we see in the downtown district every day. In the summer, actually from May till about October, it's the flower program. It's a program that's only a couple of years old, but has had a huge impact. As far as what we can tell, when people walk downtown or drive downtown, the flowers really impress them. Holiday lighting, which I'm sure everybody has seen, and thanks to Dick DeGray and his staff of volunteers who have made that happen this year. A lot of people don't realize that it is the Downtown Alliance and volunteers who make that happen. The lights on the trees, the lights in Pliny Park and in Plaza Park, the lights on the Whetstone Pathway, that is all done through the dollars that are contributed through the members of the Downtown Alliance and through the good nature of our volunteers led by Dick DeGray. We're also proposing a bridge painting project for the bridge over the Whetstone. I know we've talked to Steve, I don't know if Steve's still here, about we're going to foot the bill for the paint, and we're going to get the volunteers out there. And we're looking for that for, I think it's going to be summer of 2016. Is that correct? 2015 coming up? 2015. And then finally, we have a very popular facade enhancement program. And what this does is it allows us to cost share for our downtown business owners if they want to improve their facade. They have to make an application to us. We'll run it through certain parameters, and if it's able to be, we will approve it, and we will cost share it with them. And we're asking to fund that at $3,000 for this year. It was popular last year. We're looking forward to continuing it. So.
Thank you. That's
You're welcome.
Just what I was hoping for. John?
Yeah, I have some questions.
Good.
I have some questions. And I by no means, no disrespect in this, but I don't get it.
What don't you get?
I don't get, why do we need the Downtown Alliance? And I'm just, because I've been around this for 4 or 5 years, and
sure,
Dick was on the board with me, and I still don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So
we have a chamber, we have.
Yeah. Is the question, and let me just clarify what you're looking for.
Ahead.
Is it, why do we need these people who are in this room right now who are decorating downtown and who are doing these things? Or is it, what is the purpose of the Downtown Alliance?
What is the purpose of the Downtown Alliance?
Yeah.
And, you know, if we have all this big group of volunteers, and if we have the chamber, and if we have all these other, or, you know, a lot of our, I just, what is the benefit that we get? And because I've heard from merchants downtown that, and a lot of them don't like it because they have to pay into it. So,
yeah. I think that, you know, one thing that I want to address is your merchant's comment, which is a fair comment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that historically, and you've read it in my letter, that we've done a good job at really reaching out to our merchant population.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the Downtown Alliance has also been through a bit of a turmoil that's been reflected in the comments that you made. The Downtown Alliance, formerly known as BAB, has a very specific purpose, and that purpose is to manage and help grow the Downtown Improvement District. And that Downtown Improvement District is there it's a designated area that allows us to, through the state government and the federal government, to have access to grant funding and different levels of improvement projects that we can then enact in the downtown improvement area. I think that if you look at what the Downtown Alliance has done in the past, especially the most recent past, and I'm going to do a little kind of mea culpa here. You know, we have not done a very good job at being the organization that I think this town could have. I have only joined the board as of June. What I joined back in June is an organization that's very different than the organization that exists today. As you read in my letter, at that time we had 5 board members. We now have 15. At that time, we weren't able to really constitute the committees that are the structure and the basis of our organization. Now we have 5 functioning committees that are out there getting stuff done. I think that if you talk to the merchants today, particularly the 44 merchants that attended our recent meeting, in which we had 100% approval of our budget, at least in person. We had 1 person out of our entire membership that voted against our budget. I think you would find that their perspective on what we're doing is very different than it was 3 months or 6 months before. And I think if you talk to them a year from now or even 6 months from now, you'll find an entirely different perspective that's even more positive. What do we do that's different than the Chamber of Commerce? Well, the Chamber of Commerce is the entire town. Indeed, it expands throughout the region. We are that very specific downtown improvement district, and that is our focus, and that is where we want to spend our time. It is the heartbeat, it is the place when people come to visit Brattleboro, it is the place that they are impressed by, and our job is to make sure that they remain impressed by it. So, and I know Dick wanted to throw
well, and my next question was going to be to Mr. DeGray, because Dick, you were very verbal years ago about it, and I want to know what your insight is now into it, and what your, you know, what your vision is, or what.
And I think that's a fair question. I think there's probably some people at home watching on TV that are probably calling the fire department and rescue going, what the heck's he doing over there?
Exactly.
I certainly used to volley some fastballs at the organization for what I felt that they didn't do. And I can tell you unequivocally that if I didn't see improvement in the organization that I've seen in the past 6 months, I would be sitting out there advocating for you as to say, why do we have a downtown district? When you ask that question, that's a question that could be posed to the town also, because they are partners with us. And it is the town's DID. We are their designated organization to represent the municipality as a downtown organization. So we are partners with you, and so the question that you asked of us is also a fair question to ask the administration as to why do we have a DID. And there are different roles, as Matt pointed out, between the chamber and the difference with our organization. I can tell you unequivocally that when the administration started taking an interest in the organization and assigning Rod Francis and assigning Kate as an ex officio member, that the organization really started to improve. And that's something that should be duly noted. For years and years and years, which was my big consternation, here was an organization that did what it wanted to do without any oversight from the administration, and I always thought that that was the wrong thing to do, but I could never get the administration or my fellow board members to go along and say, listen, we need oversight here from the town. That is, we're your designee, so you should be watching and paying attention to what we're doing. You are now doing that, and it has enhanced us. I believe in our board that went from 5 people, it was floundering. I certainly had talked to several people on the board, to the administration, about saying, this doesn't look good. Why are we continuing this? Miraculously, we've had new energy with board members. There's a lot of excitement. The flower program, the lighting program, the facade improvement program are all things that we're able to do that the chamber can't do. Because if you're a chamber member and you're out in West Brattleboro, out on Putney Road, you're going to go, why is all your focus down on Main Street? We're just as important out here or up there as Main Street is. So we get to do those things and focus on the building owners and the businesses downtown. And I truly believe, and I wouldn't be sitting here saying this, that if I didn't believe in the organization. Certainly my reputation is that I've always been never afraid to say what's on my mind. And if I didn't believe what was happening here right now, I wouldn't be here advocating for this budget to move forward. We're partners with the town. When I make a phone call and I call Steve Barrett or Hannah or Carol Lalott, we're partners in what happens downtown. So it's not just our organization, it's the municipality. And for us to move forward, we need to be partners and we need to have that good relationship. And so the town is eligible for grants through the downtown program and has benefited from having a DID district. Always the big question was, is BABB/Downtown Alliance the organization that should be representing you?
Right.
And I'm saying right now that they're the organization that should be representing the town.
So I'll step in now if I could. Enhancing and supporting the vitality and the health of the downtown district is a core function of our municipal government. And it's only with a healthy and vital downtown that we can survive and build for the future. And the structure through which the state government and the federal government has decided to support downtown districts is through a designated downtown organization program. And we have had difficult relationships in the past with different iterations of the designated downtown organization, but we have worked very hard over the course of the last year to make sure that the town is supporting the organization and that the structures are and remain in place to make sure that we remain eligible for grant funding and for other state funding that may be available to help support the downtown. And when I opened up and I said that I thought the work plan was really very different and on a very different path than what I had seen before, I absolutely meant it. It looks totally different. And we have asked to have people from the administration and representative from the board, the select board, and the chamber on the designated downtown organization, the Downtown Alliance Board, in order to make sure that we've got a functioning partnership between the town government and the designated downtown organization. And hopefully the committee structure will remain strong and the projects will remain on task, and we can continue to support downtown businesses in this way, which is the structure that's been established through the state government. So that's,
well, again,
I'm really glad to see it because
right.
It's a very different presentation that's being made and a very different relationship between us and the organization than we've had in the past. I mean, it was a very ugly meeting 2 years ago when BAB came through and Dick was still on the board because they hadn't had their meeting and the budget hadn't been properly approved, and they were here presenting it to us for approval, and it was very uncomfortable. And it's not that way at all.
Yeah.
It appears to be functioning exactly the way it's supposed to, and the committees appear to be doing what they should be doing, and we look forward to a healthy relationship, with the organization.
Yeah.
And again, that's why, I didn't mean any disrespect, but I've been through it, and it's nice to see that it's working like this.
It's a fair question, John, and we're all happy to address it.
Yeah.
So
I do have one other.
Yes, please.
I do have one other concern, and it's just about the. And you had mentioned it on your economic development.
Yes.
I don't understand number one.
The periodical article placement project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't get that one at all.
That's fair. And unfortunately, our promotions committee was not able to stay. The meeting went a little bit longer than we had thought it would go. It is The idea is to engage a media marketing company to write good things about Brattleboro. And yeah, it's it's funny.
I don't know how that works.
Well, it's an interesting concept. The work that I do that's not Downtown Alliance related. We actually do this as well. You find something that's good to write about. You engage a writer to write about it, and you engage a professional entity that is responsible for placing articles in national media to then place that, and they literally shop it around.
So you're bribing somebody to...
Well, it's not quite payola, if that's what you're suggesting.
I usually call it like I see it. So.
It's a real business, and it's something that's been going on for years. But yeah, and so it's basically engaging a professional media person to look for the things that are great about Brattleboro, and then to write them and to get attention for them. And they have their contacts in the media industry, and they're always looking for these things.
Is your organization working with any other, because there's a lot of talk about economic development and, the VY money and all this. Are you working with other organizations to help spur that along, or are you going on this solely on your own?
So keep in mind, this is for the next year's budget. Yes. So we are looking to partner with other organizations to do this, to make the most out of this funding that we're offering. We're hoping that this isn't all the funding that will go into it. Right. We know that it's all the funding that our members are going to be paying for it. So we're really looking for other avenues of funding to help support this. So, and Dick, you were going to...
Could I follow up on that?
And also, this is a new line item. And I want to, Mr. Chairman, I want to tell you I appreciate your words of support. And you're right, the organization is much different and is functioning at a much higher level than it ever has in my history with the organization. But this is a new line item here, John, in terms of us spending money. There were areas that we reduced spending in, but the bottom line was $78,000. So hopefully, as Matt was saying, we hope that this becomes very fruitful for our businesses downtown. And when you talk about economic development, if someone comes to town and you have a full storefront and you have an attractive downtown, that means a lot to someone who might want to move their business to our community, or someone wants to relocate here. So having full storefronts, having the community support our downtown, this is a big weekend for downtown businesses as Holly Days, Holly Nights. And I appreciated Dave's comments early in the chair when he talked about the Christmas stocking and the Project Feed the Thousands. Well, this weekend is an opportunity for everybody in town to go down and purchase something at a rather significant discount. And our local businesses need the support of its local patrons.
Oh, yeah.
And not just once a year, but this is a great opportunity, and I've always said there's something at every price point for somebody who wants to buy a gift downtown. So we hope we see a lot of local people taking advantage of the Holly Days, Holly Nights this coming weekend.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on John's question about number one, and then ask about number two. Are you trying to attract people? Is the marketing of these, or getting these articles in national media, is that to attract people to come into town and then maybe they'll like it?
Ostensibly, yes. Yeah.
So it's, and the expectation is that businesses might be drawn into that?
I think the primary expectation is that first tourists and then businesses. The idea is that we're building awareness of the town of Brattleboro and all we have to offer. And so instead of, if somebody wants to take a day trip out of Boston, instead of heading up to Portland, maybe they'll head west out to Brattleboro. And New York, same thing. It's another destination that maybe pushes their boundaries a little bit, someplace they didn't consider before because they're in their rhythm, and we want to make them aware.
I suspect the fact that I know it makes me think probably you guys know as well that the record of economic growth is much more, is affected much more by businesses that expand and by startups than it is by... Absolutely. And obviously businesses can be drawn in, but that's not where the heart of growth happens.
No.
And number two here, the Shared Innovator Incubation Work Center seems to be I would like to make sure that, like to suggest you make sure that happens and hope that the marketing thing happens.
Yeah,
That should be one. In my understanding of things are where growth is going to come from in this new economy and with the technologies and all the other stuff that we all know is going on. That's where the growth is going to come, not necessarily from people.
I absolutely agree. You know, and $4,000 investment in periodical article placement is not going to generate thousands of jobs in Brattleboro. That's just not going to happen. But you know, one thing that we need to do is create an overall lift for everything. And so Brattleboro will not attract jobs unless it's an attractive place for people to live. And if it's an attractive place for people to visit, they might consider living here. And so there's this overall effect that we're trying to create. You're absolutely correct about the incubator development project. I think that is something that we need to spend a lot of time on. I was speaking to some folks downtown just the other day, and there's several other entities in town that have an interest in making something like this happen right downtown, including Marlboro College and a couple of other places. And so the hows and wheres and whys of it, we haven't gotten there yet. Again, this is the 16 budget. But we're excited about the potential of it, and we're excited for everything it could be as well. So
I think at least,
I guess that's the same thing.
I think at least 3 of these kind of centers have opened up around the state.
Yep.
If I remember correctly, they all had a lot of state support.
Yeah. There's one big one in Burlington. They have the old manufactory there, whatever it is, that they've totally converted into that space. Yeah. And so, yeah, and there's a lot of people in this town alone that are very interested in doing it. So I think there's real potential for that. Great. And $3,500 isn't going to do it either. You know, it's a start.
No, but hopefully we can plan, hopefully we can also plan towards the VY grant money.
Yep. Right.
Because if we've got a plan going into the next grant cycle,
exactly.
That's where funding really should be coming from for doing economic development. And really the partnership between us and the organization is a great way to try to make this happen.
Yeah.
Yes.
So go crazy.
Well, thanks, guys. I didn't mean to be devil's advocate.
No, John, it's okay.
Thank you for raising those points.
I wanted to clear it up.
My truck out in the back.
My truck's out in the back.
If you hadn't asked John, we wouldn't know.
My tires will be gone when I...
If I might just interject one more thing. You know, there's a... within Chapter 15, we're actually supposed to report to you twice a year. So you can expect that in May or June, that we'll be back at this table, and we look forward to whatever comments.
Feel free to come back more than that if you like.
Yeah.
All right. So we're ready for a motion, I think. Is it? Alex, do you want?
Well, it was just a quick comment. You know, I've been involved in the business community for 33 years right now. And over the years, you know, before the Downtown Alliance, BAVB, came into existence, there was always little flare-ups of energy among the people in town to try to revitalize or you know, energize the town, and make it more successful. And this is the first really consistent effort, and we almost floundered, but I think we're back on the track, and that's what keeps me committed to trying to work with this organization to help the town really go someplace.
Thanks, Alex.
Great. Well, we want to thank all of you for participating. You know, it's really important, and it's nice to see, and hopefully we can see it moving forward some more.
We're ready for motion. It should,
I guess I'll read the whole motion. I move to approve the annual work plan and budget of Downtown Alliance as submitted, and to add the following article to the representative town meeting warning for 2015. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $78,000 through the special assessment of properties within the Downtown Improvement District, as approved by town meeting March 19, 2005, and as delineated in the town ordinance entitled Municipal Act to Establish and Regulate the Downtown Improvement District, to be used for the capital and operating costs of projects of the town's duly designated downtown organization, as reflected in its work plan and budget.
Could you read it again?
But Jan, you heard I added some words at the end there.
Yes. Did you get that, Jan?
she did. Any discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 3-0 with one abstention and one out of the room taking a phone call. Thank you very much.
Thank
you.
You're very welcome.
Chairman,
Thank you.
fellow board members.
Thank you.
So the next item on the agenda is the Second Chance Grant 2015. So Larry Hames is up. And Larry, I would say that it was way interesting to have the grant specifications in the materials that were distributed to the board.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen them before, but it really helped to provide a clear explanation of the high-level circle of support and accountability aspect of the program that you're seeking approval for. So I know it's late and the meeting's been going on for a long time, and I don't know if anybody's watching anymore, but if you would give us, the 2 or 3 minute version of what is this grant application.
Sure.
He can actually do that.
Why don't you tell us also what your job is, since you're here?
Oh, okay. Yeah, Larry Hames, the director of the Brattleboro Community Justice Center, probably the least known office in this building. Third floor. We're on the 3rd floor. John knows where we are. 3rd floor. Okay, and back where you guys used to be, actually, David. So what my job is to run a conflict resolution program, and it's an alternative to the criminal justice system. And we are one of 22 such centers around the state of Vermont. So Vermont is very, very much in support of an alternative way of dealing with conflict outside of just the criminal system, which is going to be there for us probably forever. But it's an alternative for some people. It is a better way of doing business. So that's kind of why we exist, or that is why we exist. And one of the services, we are across the spectrum of conflict resolution. On the far end are people who have been incarcerated for more egregious crimes, violent crimes, basically sexual in nature, often against children. So these are the cases that actually David prosecutes in court, when they come up. And so these are the folks that are going to be spending time in jail, most likely. They have created more difficulty in terms of trust in the community and within their families and the greater part here in Brattleboro when they live here. The thing is, we know that 95% of people who have been incarcerated will be returning to the community at some time. There are a few people like mass murderers. I don't know if we have any in jail now, David, but would not be coming back to the community or expected to. But pretty much everybody else is going to come back. So same with the group that we're talking about. So they come back in. The question basically, I think, that we're asking, how do you want the folks to come back? And particularly when you're talking about really terrible crimes, and most of us have extreme reactions to this, as we should. How do we want to accept those people back into our town? With, stay away, some communities go live under the bridge, 500 feet from a hospital, school, playground? Or do you want to say, here, we're going to extend a hand, we're going to say, come back, and we're going to be watching closely, but we know that you have the chance to make changes. You have indicated your full responsibility for what you've done. You want to make those changes. You've started that process. Come now, when you're living in the community, and prove that to us. So that's basically it. So we give them that support. We surround them with that support and direction to make that happen. And of course, we work very closely in concert with our probation officers, because all the people we're dealing with are coming back while they're under supervision. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Perfect sense.
So,
okay.
None of Brattleboro the town does not contribute to.
In kind only, John.
Just in kind only.
We have heat and computer access, et cetera, upstairs. Yep. We get to use bookkeeping services.
So your full budget is off of federal and
yes.
And state
This is again. This is like the 4th time this has been re-upped from the federal government, and the state of Vermont has gone after, and it's been very successful because the country is now looking at this COSA model, Circle of Support and Accountability, as one of the very, shall we say, cutting-edge ways of addressing the reentry issue. So, yeah, it is really booming. We're doing research with UVM. It really, we're seeing some extremely good results.
And I would just note that there's been an increased focus at the state level on trying to direct programming and services to risk areas that offenders face. And so that's actually built into this new grant agreement as well, because there's now some more recognition of the fact that programming needs to be directed to risk areas and to assessments focusing on risk. And those are some of the issues that the COSA model is then focusing on in providing support. So we're ready. Does anybody have any other questions or comments?
Clarification, the required match, it says $500 hours.
500 hours.
Okay, there's a dollar sign in front of 500.
That's interesting. No, it should say, it just should be 500. Okay, so if that's on the agenda, that's incorrect.
Those are volunteer hours.
Yeah. Those are volunteer hours, and we have, right now we have 4 or 5 COSAs operating, and so if you have 3 volunteers per COSA, we can pretty much easily make that number within the year.
Thanks for noticing that typo. So we'll strike out. Somebody will make sure that Kim knows that that dollar sign needs to come out under the required match. Any other questions or comments? Then we're ready for motion, please.
Go ahead.
I move to accept and appropriate a 2015 Second Chance grant from the Vermont Department of Corrections in the amount of $30,000 for the Brattleboro Community Justice Center for restorative reintegration of moderate to high-risk offenders.
Is there any further discussion? We have the motion to accept and appropriate the DOC grant. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And be opposed, abstaining. That carries 5-0. The last item on the agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Thanks for staying.
Sure, no problem.
The last item on the agenda is to consider an agenda item for December 16th. I'm going to provide a little bit of background about the process we're involved in, and then I'm going to speak about the specific agenda item for consideration. 4 years ago in April, actually it was in March, we became aware that some board members, newly elected board members, became aware that item had been discussed at the agenda setting meeting and had been passed over for the select board meeting agenda, but that none of us had learned about it at all except sign it kind of through a side channel. And what had happened is that the Safe and Green campaign had voted a resolution at town meeting, or sponsored a resolution that had passed overwhelmingly, like 1,000 to 400, for the town to send a message through to the legislators. And Mr. DeGray and Mr. Chapman talked about putting it on the select board meeting agenda, and then decided not to do so. And when the rest of us found out that the item had been passed over, we voted to put it on the agenda, and we ultimately acted on the item that had been adopted by the voters. And we also changed the procedure so that any item that was considered for placement on the agenda that was not placed on the agenda, a notice had to be provided that it had been passed over. And then any board member could ask for it then to be considered just as to whether it should actually be on the agenda or not. And so Jan and Patrick included in our binders the rule of conduct, and this is page 4 through 5, procedure for consideration of select board agenda items. So that's the procedure. About 10 days ago, now segueing right into the particular item that's to be considered. About 10 days ago, we got some emails from Chris Chapman asking, well, not asking, really sort of taking the board to task for not putting him back on the agenda after last April when he was on the agenda before.
Without editorializing?
Well, I think I'm not editorializing. That's what the email said. It was critical of the board for not putting him back on the agenda. And so we treated his email request as a request for agenda time again. And as I understand it, Chris wants to make a presentation to the board and ask the board to adopt a resolution asking Brattleboro taxpayers to pay more into the town than taxes owed. Kate and I considered that request at the agenda setting meeting last Wednesday, and both of us voted against putting that item on the agenda.
It's my daughter again.
And so we gave notice to everybody that that item was on for...
Mom is coming to get you. When she gets there. Okay.
We'll just wait.
10 minutes. I gotta go. Bye.
We gave notice to everybody that the item had been considered and not included on the agenda. And one board member asked for it to be on the agenda for tonight to decide whether it should be on the agenda for December 16th. And that's why we're here. And I'm prepared to speak to why I don't think it should be on the agenda, why I voted against it being on the agenda for tonight, and why I don't think it should be on the agenda on the 16th. But that's where we stand.
Now, this is something that that has been talked about before.
I'll then explain why it is I voted against it being on the agenda.
Okay.
Chris appeared in front of the board in April or March, earlier this year, and made a presentation about fundraising for helping to pay the town's bills. And my recollection is that at the time, we responded that if he had a more specific proposal that he wanted to present to us, that we would consider putting it back on the agenda. But the proposal that he made most recently, other than wanting to use donations to buy window blinds for the select board meeting room, seemed even less specific than the last time. And essentially it was a general request for us to endorse the notion that people should pay more into taxes, more into the town than they owe in taxes. And I don't think that that's the real role of the select board, to be endorsing a general proposition like that. We're a taxing and spending authority. And there is a place for fundraising. We talked about it in the budget meetings last week. We talked about the possibility of raising money for the pool or raising money for the Zamboni. And there may be other specific programs to be considered. But I think that it's terrible public policy in the midst of really significant budget considerations to be voting on a general proposition that we want to ask people to make donations to help to fund the town's general operations. And I don't want to vote on it. I don't want the public spectacle of being put to a vote on that type of a thing, given the work that we have to do. If there's a specific proposal, I'm happy to consider it. So I voted against it. And, you know, Kate also was there.
Yeah, I mean, and I voted against it as well because we had a presentation on April 15th, I believe it was. I went back and looked. There was nothing new to this. In fact, as David said, it was even less specific than the first time around. So to me, there's nothing new to it. We've heard it before, and I don't even really, you know, it's instead of being a more specific proposal, it's a less specific proposal. So that's why, you know, again, you know, David said we have a lot of work to do, and unless someone's going to come to us with more details and a plan and really so we can understand what this whole thing would look like and what the plan is, I just didn't think it was It's not ready for prime time, as the whatever it is goes, as the saying goes.
So
I read a series of emails, an incomplete series, because the conversation pretty much stopped, that included a lot of contradictions. You're saying what you understand his intention to be, but if he's not here telling us, we don't know his intention. And the way you characterized it may be what he has in mind, it may not be. If he can't come and present it, then we'll never know that. I'll never know that. You may be completely confident, and your perspective on what he wants to do may be accurate. I don't know that. And if he has something else in mind, I'd like to hear it. And I think that the idea of promoting philanthropy and letting people know that we welcome help and considering different ways of doing that is worth exploring. And if he wants to volunteer to do some of that work, that's fine. If he wants a resolution from us that we don't agree with, then he won't get it. But if we don't listen to him, if we don't let him come here and speak, then we don't know. And it remains confused and innuendo and expectation and understanding rather than truth. I mean, I think having the chief and the assistant chief here giving factual, direct information to the community about what they do and what they're doing was a great benefit to this community. And I think having Chris come in and present his ideas again and his perspective, I think is the only way we'll really have the information to be able to make a reasonable decision.
The language that I included in the memo is quoted directly from his email. He wants the board to vote on a resolution endorsing the proposition that taxpayers should pay more into the town than taxes owed. And that's his exact quote. And as to that specific item, I don't want to put that on the agenda, and I voted against it. And I've explained my reasons why. Other board members?
Donna?
I think somewhere between concern about sitting through something that could, appear to be a public spectacle and refusing to hear from somebody who I think is really working in his own way in the interest of the town. I feel like we owe him the respect of giving him the opportunity to come before the board. And I hear the concern about his proposal not being specific enough for us to be able to take up as it is. And I wonder, and I also read the email flurry, I wonder if there is the opportunity for Mr. Chapman to come before us with something a little more formed than he has proposed. But I don't want to just refuse him the opportunity to come and say what he has to say.
And correct me if I'm wrong, hasn't Mr. Chapman already come before us with his original proposal? He has done that in an open meeting.
April 15th.
He came with it. He and Eli Gould came with some ideas and proposals.
With some ideas.
And we asked him to come back.
Okay.
We invited him to come back with a more specific proposal.
So I don't know what he's coming back with. I mean, I read the flurries of, and I don't agree that we should be in the business of asking for money to run our town. If somebody wants to give, there's ways to do that. I just don't want us to be in the position of basically begging for money. I don't think that's what the select board is here for. And again, I don't want to make a spectacle out of it, and I certainly don't want to blow this any bigger than it should be. So at this point, again, after reading the emails, and God, my name wasn't mentioned in any of them, that I just can't support it as it stands right now. I mean, he can certainly come during open mic or public participation and give a quick spiel on it. and then see if it's something that the town maybe wants to support. But again, there are mechanisms, there are ways of giving and being, and being a philanthropist without the town saying, well, you really should do this. And that's where I feel uneasy about it. I don't disagree. I just feel uneasy about having the select board being the one to lay a law down and say, all right, you really should give. If you want to give.
And to me, it's not a fully formed idea yet. It hasn't progressed anywhere since we talked about it in April, besides an offer to buy window blinds for this room. I mean, that's as specific as where we've moved since we had the conversation in April. And I think, if there's a bigger proposal to be made, it would be nice to see it prior to saying, well, let's put it on the agenda. Because we're putting on something on the agenda that's not a fully formed idea. Nothing has really changed between April and now. And we do have a lot of stuff to talk about, and I know there are a lot of people that would like public forums, so this case, I just don't see it's rising to the level of us talking about it, because it's no different than what we heard. Again, it's actually different than we heard in April, because it's less specific. It's actually become a less fully formed idea than it was when we listened to it the first time, and I think that's, besides the buying window treatments for this room, that's the most specific that this thing has gotten.
But David Scholes, I agree with you for bringing this up.
Oh, yeah.
And for if there is something that the chair and vice chair, decide not to put on, that we have every right to say, and then to put it before a vote. And so I'm not, by any means, I think it was a wonderful idea to have this brought up and to see our procedure and to see that it is equitable. And that,
Again, I just want to say again that I don't know what he's going to present, and I would like to know what he's going to present, because it may be a potential source of revenue. And I didn't read anything that indicated that the town's going to be pleading for money, or that we're going to be laying down the law, or any of the kinds of the things that you use to characterize what he's doing. And that's part of the problem, is that it's whatever we all decide in our minds he's going to do, as opposed to what he really wants to present. And that's why I want to hear it.
well, wouldn't it be better if he tried to get it a little bit more concrete and then send us, an email and say, here, this is what I'd like to... If I saw something like that, and I saw that there was a direction and a purpose, then I may vote.
Because the email, just stopped. So there were, it wasn't a continuing... He was asked about, the one email said it's even less specific, and then he mentioned, well, actually, we're talking about the window insulation for this room. And so, okay, there's a specific, and then it just,
right, but that's
it didn't go any further.
Right, it didn't.
I think for me, as I hear our discussion about it, I'm pretty clear that it is the chair and the vice chair's job. We charge you with the work of deciding what is important enough and formulated enough to go on the agenda. I think what I would ask, if we end up voting not to invite Mr. Chapman to come before the full board, is simply a reach back with a clear explanation of why it is we're not going to take that up right now, why it doesn't feel fully formed enough to bring to the whole board, and appreciate the fact that he is wanting to do something to ease the burden for the taxpayers, which I think is something we should be supporting whether or not we put it on the agenda.
So how do we do that? How do we get that feedback to him?
Falls to me.
Maybe John.
John? Unless other people on the board have something else to say. I got nothing else to say. No, we generally hear from the board first, John.
I was here when he made that presentation, and I commented that, in my experience, it's wise to keep the public, private, and charitable sectors separate. I'm also hearing some talk in town about having the town stop its human services funding, which is basically charitable support. I think the ideal approach would be if the town created a Town of Brattleboro Foundation, adjunct to the town, of course, with some of the same people maybe even serving on the board. I mean, you guys serve on the Liquor Commission board and the Water and Sewer board, and they're separate entities. But if you form a foundation, you could get charitable donations for worthy projects for the town. People giving larger donations could get tax deductions. And the principle that exists in philanthropy would be preserved, whereby the giver has a right to expect that the money they give is spent on a certain thing. Instead of it going into the general pool or potentially being lumped into the general fund, that principle of charitable intent would be preserved. It's worth considering, and maybe a creative executive could speak with Chris about that. I'd be happy to work with him or anyone else on something like that. It's something that I've done a lot of in my life.
Thank you, John. Howard?
I don't know if this is a conversation we want to start. Maybe you could, I don't understand this email conversation. I mean, open meeting laws being what they are, it sounds like you all have been talking about this through email, which I'm sure you all know is not permissible.
Well, what happened is that Mr. Chapman sent an email to the board. I responded. He sent another email to the board, and they were blind copies, so I don't know who else he copied. And I responded once more, said, treating your email as a request to put something on the agenda, we'll vote on it at the agenda setting meeting. Those emails certainly can be made available, but they really were from a member of the public to the board, and they weren't really emanating from the board. I responded.
They weren't between us either.
No, I mean, it was me, it was Chris to us. I responded to Chris, and I copied who I knew was interested, and he wrote back. And I responded once more and said, we'll put it on the agenda setting meeting. But you're going to have a copy of them. I can forward them to you.
Yeah, so I don't know how you get around that. I mean,
No,
that's just somebody's email.
It's a legitimate question.
Yeah.
It's not an open meeting law issue, really, because there wasn't any deliberation. It really is a question whether it's a public records law issue. And I don't know quite how that applies where a member of the public send something into the board as opposed to the other way around. We weren't communicating amongst ourselves about it. But we'll get you a copy of those.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? All right, so somebody can make a motion to put Chris on the agenda or not. I'm not making the motion.
No, I'll let it go, because I think Donna articulated the perspective, and if you want to try and articulate it as well as she does, or ask her to do it.
Nobody can do it like she does.
I'll take care of it, and I'll consult as necessary to make sure that it communicates the right information. I promise.
Calendar.
Does somebody want to read the calendar? I don't want to.
We're not having a calendar.
Here, I'll read the calendar. December 3rd, 4 to 6 p.m., Arts Committee in the Select Board Meeting Room. December 3rd, 6 to 7 p.m., Ad Hoc Futures Committee in the Hannah Cosman Meeting Room. Friday, December 5, 3 to 5 p.m., Police Fire Facilities Building Committee in the Hannah Cosman Meeting Room. Monday, December 8, 6 to 7:30, Parks and Recs Board in the Gibson-Aiken Center. Tuesday, December 9, Tree Advisory Committee in the Hannah Cosman Meeting Room. Friday, December 12, 10 to 11:30 a.m., ADA Advisory Committee in the Marlboro College Graduate Center VCIL Conference Room. Monday, December 15, Development Review Board here in the Select Board Meeting Room. Tuesday, December 16, 6:15 to 9:30. Select Board meeting in the Select Board Meeting Room. Thank you, ASL interpreters. Thank you, everybody who's been watching and paying attention, and everybody who participated. Thank you, members of the press and BCTV, and James Van Slavin. And I don't know your name.
Russ Graybeck.
And Russ Graybeck. Thank you for everybody for participating. We're ready for motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have motion to adjourn. Everybody in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining, that carries 5-0.
So no